Travel companies scramble to repatriate British families after thousands flee wildfires in Rhodes.
Very good morning to you at 6 o'clock on Monday, the 24th of July. This is Breakfast on GBNews with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading the news this morning, the government is putting pressure on airlines to rescue British families in Rhodes after tens of thousands were forced to flee the wildfires that engulfed their accommodation. Displaced holidaymakers described the scenes as like hell on earth.
It comes as Rishi Sunak faces a split within his own party on his commitment to net zero following the Conservative victory in Uxbridge, seen by many as a rejection of green policies.
The Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, will today announce new plans to tackle the housing crisis with proposals to relax rules on extensions and give more flexibility to turn shops into homes.
Jeremy Hunt has revealed how his family's been devastated by cancer as he speaks out about his own diagnosis being caught early by the NHS. The Chancellor has called for Britain to become a leader in the global fight against the disease which took both his parents and affected his brother.
In cricket, the Ashes ends in a washout. Rain in Manchester killed England's hopes of a winner. And a winner takes all. Fifth test with Australia retaining the urn. Paul Coyte with the details.
Oh, Eamonn, what an awful way to lose the Ashes. But anyway, I'm sure the Aussies don't care. It was also a washout at the Open as well, and there's a new name now on the claret jug.
So one test to go, and we'll bring you the latest weather forecast, and that's a bit of a test as well.
We're seeing a lot of unsettled weather across the UK over the weekend. Will we hold on to that theme during the week ahead? Well, the picture behind me sets the scene quite nicely, but I'll give you more details later.
So this awful situation in Rhodes and now in Corfu, it appears as well. The government putting pressure on airlines and holiday firms to bring home thousands of British tourists affected by these wildfires.
Yes, ministers have been holding emergency meetings over the weekend, and EasyJet has announced it will run repatriation flights to rescue holidaymakers, with 2 taking place today.
Now, the Greek authorities are saying this operation, which has involved moving 30,000 people, is the country's biggest ever evacuation effort.
Well, let's speak now to travel correspondent at The Independent, Simon Calder, and regular on the programme. Good morning to you. You join us from Liverpool Airport, where I believe some fairly bewildered British holidaymakers have been making their way home from the island of Rhodes.
Well, there will be some people arriving here who've come back via some circuitous routes, but actually it seems to be, for most people, a fairly orderly departure. There were early morning arrivals at various airports across the UK from Rhodes, and really interesting to note, by the way, that one holiday company, Thomas Cook, is saying that actually people went off to their holidays in Rhodes yesterday quite happily. They're not going anywhere near the affected area, and they're sending out more people today. And certainly there are flights going out from Gatwick to Rhodes today, which will have passengers on board starting their holidays, as well as you mentioned, the extra EasyJet flights, which will be bringing back over 400 people from the island. And travel companies such as Jet2 and TUI are bringing back people pretty much as they were supposed to be coming back. They're sending out empty planes because they've cancelled package holidays for the next few days, so people will be coming back. But my goodness, what terrible scenes there have been. People were 1 minute effectively enjoying a relaxing holiday, the next they were told to run with their lives with whatever possessions they could grab. So a dreadful ordeal, and many people spending another night in schools, on the floors of conference centres, and desperately hoping that they will be able to get back.
Well, it's a combination of the forestry around certain resorts and the wind whipping up the flames as well. So there's smoke to deal with, there's flames to deal with, there's safety of life to deal with there as well. So if you're heading out, Simon, to Rhodes, how do you find out the areas that are affected and the areas that aren't?
Well, yeah, there's various maps around online which will show you where the problems are, and it's pretty much the southern and southeastern part of the island. So actually, south of the big resort of Lindos is where you've got the worst problems, and actually in the north of the island, around Rhodes town and the airport and resorts around there is no significant problem, except of course you've suddenly got thousands of people who have been evacuated at very, very short notice from hotels in the area affected by the inferno, who are turning up trying to find hotels to stay in. Very, very few, many heading for the airport and spending the night there, although it's not a large airport by any measure, and some also boarding ferries to get to the island of Kos, and some also to Turkey to try to fly back from there.
What's the situation with insurance and refunds for passengers? What rights do people have if they are caught up in all of this?
OK, if you're caught up in it, then obviously the main thing is to stay safe and to make sure that you are as comfortable as possible, although that's extremely difficult in the circumstances. People who, for example, have had a 2-week holiday that's become a 1-week holiday and they're being flown back now, they will be able to claim something by way of compensation from their holiday company, although it won't be too much. TUI, incidentally, is saying, yep, you will just finish your holiday as normal. Travel insurance will be useful for people who are in the position of having lost some possessions. Many people I've been hearing have had to leave stuff behind in the hotels. If they've been extra expenses getting to another island, finding a place of safety, travel insurance should be able to help with that. But apart from that, it's mostly what your travel company will do, and many of them are saying you can come back early if you can, and there's space available. There are actually, of course, some standard commercial flights coming out of Rhodes today, but most of them sold out, and the first I've seen is tomorrow evening on EasyJet coming back into Gatwick. So very uncertain situation. A lot of people desperately upset because, of course, many of them just begun what was going to be a lovely holiday, possibly the first one since before the COVID pandemic, and instead it's just ended literally in tears. And of course our thoughts go out to the local people, many of whom perhaps have lost their homes as well, potentially as their livelihoods.
Yeah, we've heard those descriptions. It was like a scene from hell, and we're going to have first-hand accounts later on in the programme today. People who had to flee, had to run for 3 hours to avoid the flames and things. And I bring this up because I'm looking at you, my friend, and are you reporting for us from Liverpool Airport today, or are you heading somewhere?
No, I'm enjoying being in the lovely northwest of England in Merseyside, and very kindly Liverpool John Lennon Airport said that I could report for you from here. So
and very impressive. I like you in a shirt and tie. So it looks very, very impressive there.
For us.
But the thing is, Simon, honestly, when you look at all the things that holidaymakers have to contend with, the delays, the schools breaking up, more people using transport, you've got the temperature dome, then you've got these wildfires as well. You couldn't blame a lot of people for thinking twice and thinking, maybe we'll just stay at home.
Oh, absolutely. And look, I think in the longer term, Eamonn, you may well find that a number of people who've perhaps had, I hope, lovely holidays this year in the Mediterranean, maybe got a little bit too warm for comfort, will be thinking, well, hang on, it is getting more extreme, it appears. There is a lot of hassle associated with travel, although things seem here to be going pretty smoothly this morning, and just concluding that they will stay in the UK, maybe go over to Ireland, or indeed the near continent, places like Belgium, Netherlands, Netherlands, northern France, and enjoy those rather than heading off on package holidays to the Mediterranean. But even last week, when we had that almighty heat wave, travel companies were telling me, no, people aren't cancelling. And I tell you what, their new bookings for last-minute departures are coming in at the same rate. And the fact that some people are very happily flying off on holiday to Rhodes today, despite everything that's been seen and reported from there, shows you that British holiday makers really like their sun, and if they've decided to go somewhere, well, they're jolly well going.
Simon, thank you for that. We'll leave it there, and appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much.
And listen, if you're watching or listening to this and you've been affected, we'd love to hear from you this morning. Do get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.com. I was chatting to one of my girlfriends yesterday who set off with her 2 kids and her husband on Saturday morning for 2 weeks in Rhodes. They booked a little villa. They've been there every year for donkey's years. They know it really well. They were advised there were some problems, but it was nowhere near their resort. And apparently 2 o'clock on Saturday, the wind picked up, changed direction, and they were picked up at the airport. And the transfer said, well, you know, there's a few issues with the late checkout. If you just pop into town for lunch, massively playing it down. And then they got a call saying, yeah, we're relocating you to a different part of the island. Your villa has burnt down.
Wow.
And
the villa burnt down?
The villa had burnt down, and obviously trying to explain to the children what was going on. And they flew home overnight tonight on their 2-week holiday.
Were there belongings in the villa?
No, because they never got to the villa. They literally arrived on Saturday morning, flew back Sunday night, and arrived at Luton at 1 a.m. this morning coming back.
Gosh.
I did ask her to come on, but she said they hadn't slept for 2 days, so she couldn't talk to us. But scary for children.
Rhodes was the second place I ever went to abroad.
Tell me about it. I've never been.
It's beautiful. They have this place called Lindos, the Valley of the Butterflies. It's all in the forestry. There's just white butterflies all around, and then there's the Rhodes Colossus.
Yes, is that like another Acropolis?
No, it was a wonder of the world, I think. And anyway, the statue fell into the harbour, but I think there's 2 big feet off whoever it was.
I believe there's some second Acropolis as well on the island, and I do think that's one of the really sad parts of it. Obviously, the livelihoods and the homes of the people who live there, but also the history and all the architecture.
I'm pretty sure.
Burnt.
No, I was going to say no. That was Kos. I was going to say Hippocrates lived there, but he didn't. He lived in Kos.
Nearby.
There was the Hippocratic Oath, and there's a tree under which he took the Hippocratic Oath and whatever. I should be a tour guide.
You should be.
Really.
I love it. And now, of course, Corfu. I think there's 18 areas of risk, and they've been doing beachside evacuations there out to sea. So a terrible picture this morning. We're keeping a close eye on it for you. Have all the latest, and if you're affected, do get in touch.
Yeah, and if you're worried, what should you do next? Let us know. We'll try and get you the advice. gbviews@gbnews.com. Rishi Sunak's facing pressures from within his own party to rethink climate strategy after the Conservative victory in Uxbridge. Now, the reason for that is that victory was seen by many as a rejection of ULEZ and green policies in general, net zero.
So low-traffic neighbourhoods and emission zones could face the axe, but the Prime Minister's reportedly standing firm on the government's net zero pledges. Well, let's see what James Heal thinks about all this.
How long will he stand firm on that if he was faced with losing the general election, James?
Well, I think the key thing is that it's probably not going to decide a general election overall, Eamonn. I think that, look, within the party, there's clearly some hunger here to find some wedge issues which the Conservatives can use against Labour. Green issues, some of the more extreme of those, are seen as kind of a way in which you can have a wedge issue ahead of the next election. But the key thing, I think, is that most voters do still back green policies in the whole. The key thing is that they support it up until the point where the costs really affect them. And if they're seen as being disproportionately affected by them, as we saw in Uxbridge with the ULEZ issue, that's when they stop supporting them. So I think it's a key balancing act to get right, and within the Conservative coalition, that's what they're kind of weighing up.
It's funny, the juxtaposition of these two stories. You've got the wildfires and unprecedented scenes on these beautiful holiday destinations, huge temperatures, record temperatures, almost, 45 and upwards around there. And then you've got Michael Gove, who's obviously the Levelling Up Secretary. You've got Lord Frost, who people knew very familiar with as the Brexit Secretary. Is that right, Brexit? Yeah. And Jacob Rees-Mogg, a regular here, and also was recently in the Cabinet, all saying we should back away from all of those green crusades.
Yeah, I mean, it's a jarring issue, and I can understand why in a sort of cost of living crisis as we are in, the sort of salience of net issue might have sort of dropped down the agenda. But voters will be looking at the pictures today, what's happening in kind of Rhodes. They also do show concerns in repeated polling groups and focus groups, etc. But the key thing is to get a balancing act right. So we're seeing Michael Gove yesterday in the Sunday Telegraph talking about tweaking some of those measures, like having landlords some of the emissions measures they've got to do in terms of insulation, watering that down in 2028. We're talking about things like petrol cars in 2030, the ban on that. But really, are we going to see a whole-scale rejection of the net zero crusade? No, we're not. Rishi Sunak, we don't think, is as interested in it as Boris Johnson. But on the other hand, he's also aware that a lot of this stuff has been embedded into legislation. Government and private industry are also getting ahead of ready for the transition to net zero by 2050. So I don't think we're going to see the kind of whole-scale rejection that some, like David Frost and Jacob Rees-Mogg of this very parish, would like it to be.
Now, Michael Gove is going to talk about the housing crisis. There's no doubt we do have a housing crisis. So what's he going to do about it? He's going to let you extend your loft. That's not going to solve the housing crisis.
No, and it's one of a couple of measures he's going to announce today in this speech. They want to have sort of development corporations set up across the country, like we had in the Docklands in the 1980s in places like Sheffield and Leeds and Tees Valley. He's also going to be heralding the fact that the Conservatives are likely to hit their 1 million new homes pledge by the end of this Parliament. But as you say, Eamonn, and what Labour is saying today is that it's not going to be enough to address the crisis. We've seen house prices go up by 50% since the government came to power in 2010.
What's the delay? What's holding them back?
Well, it's the kind of issue of the balancing act, which is that on the one hand you have local residents who don't want to see new building. They also want to preserve the kind of the character of their local area, sort of countryside and the green belt, etc. And also in the Conservative ranks there are also these tensions, which is why just after Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister in October, there was a big rebellion in the Commons and trying to make this 300,000 new homes a year target
so
voluntary.
We're hearing from the Prime Minister today that the Tories will have reached their manifesto pledge of having built 1 million new homes.
So the 1 million new homes is over the course of the 5-year Parliament since 2019, so that obviously would be work out as sort of 200,000 a year. But most experts think we need about 300,000 at least to keep track with the rising population. And so therefore it is what the Conservatives promised in 2019, but whether it's enough is quite another question.
Another thing that irks me, he's going to make it easier to convert shops into houses. Now, I don't see the point of this because this is what they do with petrol stations, with pubs, with banks, with everything. This is what continues to kill the high street by a slow death. They should be making it more difficult, surely, rather than easier to convert a shop into homes or apartments or whatever it happens to be. I think it's just sad that that's the only thing that they can think of, that, you know, instead of growing the high street, we're actually reducing it.
Well, I think this is a policy that's been floated several times over a number of years. I first remember covering it myself in 2019, so it's something that's been going on for a long time. I think the key issue here is the decline of the high street and the death of the high street, really. And nowadays, you think you go down many high streets in London, obviously you're going to see lots of vape shops and phone repair shops rather than the kind of bustling businesses of the past. And that's simply because, you know, Amazon and other companies have taken over those businesses. So what do you do about the high street? And with a housing crisis, it would seem sensible to Conservative ministers that they want to try and put some homes in there, so at least you have someone in the area providing stimulation, investment, etc., rather than it just frankly going to another sort of half a dozen vape shops.
Finally, James, I've woken up to the news this morning that the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has recently had skin cancer. I understand it's now been dealt with, but he's done a very emotive interview in the Daily Mail talking about how cancer's ravaged his family.
Yes, he talked about how both his parents sadly died from cancer. His brother has sarcoma, and Jeremy Hunt and his brother ran the London Marathon last year in aid of charities for that. And really, it's kind of his way of putting a sort of human face and explaining what the government's doing on cancer. There's going to be a big push for more screening this summer, and also he wants to be talking about things such as, you know, for instance, if the NHS is able to diagnose cancer in stage 1 or 2, that will cost half as much as the taxpayer as it would in stage 3 and 4 in identifying and preventing that. So it's a story the government really wants to promote, is kind of early identification of cancer can reduce costs and save lives.
OK. James, thank you very much.
Cheers, James. Thank you. If you've got anything to say about what we were discussing there, please do get involved. I mean, the thing about shop fronts, once they're gone, you can't get them back. I don't understand. It's harder to open up a commercial premises or shop than it is to close them down. So you can get flats anywhere.
But if you've got empty buildings, you know...
Who cares?
I think of the little high street near where I used to live, and, you know, a lot of those shops are just empty now.
Yeah, what do you have now? You have a load of apartments, shops, flats, whatever it is, and nowhere for them to go. You've no corner shop, you've no florists.
Oh, no, don't get me wrong, it's such a shame to see the high street suffer, but if it's empty, maybe good to use it?
No, they're full, but they're deserts.
Maybe the
as
issue
well.
is business rates.
I grew up on a
Make it
street.
affordable to have a shop.
We lived beside a fruit and veg shop, and across the road from us there was a bakery and there was a chemist, and there was a wool shop, and there was an ice cream parlour further down. But these were all integrated into the street, right? They were all integrated. They were there at the top of the road. There was a pub. At the bottom of the road, there was a pub. There was a fish and chip shop as well. But this is what I grew up until I was 8, just knowing you walked out your front door and you went to the shops. You went to the shops. And you just don't get that. You just get places that are created that you have to have a car to get anywhere as a result. So, or to go to a retail park or something like that. So predictable, so boring. Let us know what you think. Why aren't they building houses? Why aren't they doing the job properly? There is a massive home shortage in this country, absolutely massive, and they're doing nothing about it yet again. And all this talk about a green and present land, go up in an airplane. There's so much green land, brown land, blue land. There's all sorts of land all around the place. We have more land than you think of. What we do wrongly is we build cities too big. We build airports too big. You can do smaller places, but more of them. That's what I think.
Well, let us know what you think this morning. What do I think?
Do you think?
Well, if you go to Belgium, where they don't have the green belt and things like that, you just have along all the roads. It's just so highly developed, and actually, if you go up into an aeroplane, it's shocking. And it is so wonderful that we've protected these green pockets, and the government coming out saying we're not going to concrete over the green belt. Labour have quite openly said they're not worried about that. They're happy to build on green belt, but I really think it's something we do need to treasure and protect. And I don't know the answer. But there have to be clever workarounds. We've got to keep it lovely and green from the aeroplane. It'll be a sad day when it turns into Belgium or Netherlands.
So somewhere you can walk your Labrador on a Sunday?
No, the fields. No, but most of the green that you can see from above is farmland. And, we're talking constantly about wanting to be energy independent, and we should be more using British farmers as much as possible and protecting our farmland.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly. What did I get on Countryfile last night? Countryfile was quite boring last night. It's about wildfires everywhere. It was.
Well, yeah, it's a big story at the moment.
It was about wildfires all over Britain.
Oh, right.
Well, there wasn't really any wildfires. The rain. I was up in Manchester the weekend, and the rain which rained the cricket off, which rained the Open kept on going. But how the guys played through that, because Isabel, see, once your grips get slippery, there's no going back. If you haven't got a tight grip.
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
I tell you, it swivels in your hand.
Oh, gosh.
There's no holding on to it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad they persevered with that.
22 minutes past the hour. Good morning to you on this Monday morning. Eamonn and Isabel here with breakfast on GB News.
Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories. The City Minister has summoned bank chiefs to discuss how to protect customers from being debanked following the controversy around Coutts cutting ties with Nigel Farage. Andrew Griffith will write to chief executives of 19 banks, warning that politically exposed persons regulations are being used disproportionately.
Labour's to keep in place the 2-child cap on benefits after the party leadership managed to keep what they called unfunded spending pledges out of the document, which will be a base for its manifesto. Keir Starmer's plan for government was endorsed by Labour's National Policy Forum yesterday, but the gathering saw anger from the party's main financial backer, the Unite Union.
Spanish is set for political gridlock after its centre-right party failed to clinch a decisive majority in the general election. Both major parties have declared victory, but neither side has a clear path to forming a government. Negotiations by the two blocs will start after a new parliament convenes on August the 17th.
A multi-million-pound order of underwater cables is making its way to Brazil after leaving a factory in Worksop. If I did Brazil like Brazil, I should have done Worksop.
Go on, then.
I can't do it.
Well, you can do Nottinghamshire.
Nottinghamshire, OK. Worksop is in Nottinghamshire. And it's just one of many products Britain is exporting to the country as we trade less with the European Union and more with the rest of the world.
Well, our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, has been looking into it.
A colossal coil ready to roll halfway across the world. Weighing as much as 50 elephants, this 329-ton wire rope is leaving its factory and workshop. Destination, South America.
It's one of 3 that we've exported.
Andy is engineering manager at Brunton Shaw.
It's took 3 days to build this trailer around the reel to be picked up, and it is now ready for shipping tonight.
Every inch matters. It's so big, police are closing the road and it's attracting a crowd.
We've come down here to see the big lorry head all the way up around workshop.
That's right.
There's a big wire rope and there's loads of police cars going all around the streets.
It's something different, isn't it? So they could go back to school in September and say they've got a scene.
Bound for Brazil, it's taken 20 weeks to complete. Each wire 3.5 kilometres long. The company's sending 2, a multi-million-pound deal. It'll be used for laying pipes beneath the Pacific Ocean. Kieran buys the materials, but he started out as just an apprentice.
For me, manufacturing, there's not much of it in the UK as much anymore, but I think it needs to grow again.
He's one of 100 people from Worksop with a job here. For the leader of Bassett Law Council, James Naish, the sale shows the district can be a hub for manufacturing.
We're on a very positive journey in Bassett Law. We've got lots of companies that are moving here, and most notably the Fusion Energy project, a multi-billion-pound project, which will be taking place at West Burton Power Station.
The departure comes as new research shows a drop in manufacturing exports to the EU from England and Wales, a shift in trade patterns. The raw steel used for the wires comes from India. Managing Director Somnath says the sale that spans 3 continents will bring even bigger orders.
We have supplied a couple of this kind of product throughout the Europe and the USA globally, and we would like to think that we will be the market leader very, very soon.
A tight squeeze, but it's eventually on the road.
Big load going out, and it's been great fun for kids to come and see it.
And how many wheels did it have? Have you even counted them?
Probably like 100.
It's a long way to Brazil, but Britain is setting its own pace. Will Hollis, GB News in Worksop.
OK, you've got anything to add to that? We'd like to hear from you. But meanwhile...
Marco Patenia has your forecast.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, I'm Marco Patenia. Here's your latest weather update from the Met Office. We'll see outbreaks of rain clear away to the south-east of the UK through the day today, giving way to a mix of sunshine and showers, coupled with a fairly cool breeze. It's certainly a fairly wet picture across the south and south-east through the morning. We'll see some heavy bursts of rain in places, but to say brighter skies tucking in from the north. So as we head into the afternoon, we'll see many places having some sunny spells, coupled, yes, with a few showers, particularly towards the north and northwest, those feeding down in that cooler north to northwesterly airstream. It's certainly feeling fairly chilly out and about towards the north of the UK in that breeze. Temperatures no better than 16 or 17 Celsius. Down towards the south and southeast, we should see a high of 19 or 20. 20 is 68 in Fahrenheit. As we go through the evening, those showers will tend to ease, particularly towards the south and east. Still some feeding in there towards the north and west of Scotland. 1 or 2 of those still on the heavy side too. With the clear spells down towards the southeast, turning a little bit chilly in some rural spots. But I think the coldest temperatures will be reserved for the rural spots towards the north. Here dipping down to around about 7 or 8 degrees by Tuesday morning. As for Tuesday itself, another day of sunshine and showers is on the cards. The showers pretty well scattered towards the south and east. Most of those reserved again for the northwest of the UK, and again a few of those will be on the heavy side. Temperatures still disappointing for late July, peaking at around about the high teens towards the north of the UK, possibly a high of 19 or 20 down towards the southeast, and again 20 is 68 in Fahrenheit. That's pretty much it from me. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye for now.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, the Ashes ended in a washout. Australia retaining the urn. Paul Coit will be here with all your sport.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
OK, still to come on the programme this morning in 15 minutes' time.
Are the rumours of Meghan and Harry's relationship being on the rocks true? We'll go live to LA to speak to the royal and showbiz reporter, Kinsey Schofield.
What about this for a story? A Christian father pulled his daughter. Doesn't matter if he's Christian or not, actually, to be quite truthful, because when you hear what the sex education class was that his daughter was being taught, she was 9 years of age. And basically, because we haven't said it here, do you mind if I say what she was going to be shown?
I don't know if what would Ofcom mind is all I'm worried about. Some of the words and things might not be Ofcom, especially at 6:31.
Well, anyway,
That's not be too graphic.
If the school thought it was OK for a 9-year-old to see the process of an erection and from start to finish, why wouldn't Ofcom think the same? Anyway, this father was outraged, absolutely outraged that his 9-year-old daughter was being forced to watch this.
Sure she doesn't have a brother.
Huh?
Sorry, just thinking of bath time at home, and everyone knows little ones. You know, you learn very young what goes on in the male genitalia, don't you? When you've got small kids. No, too much. Okay,
no,
moving on.
No. Anyway, we're asking if parents should have to consent to the material their children are taught. Certain people are immune to it, like Isabel, obviously.
No. But I do think if you've got a brother, you probably know what's going on. I don't know. That's just my...
No. But anyway, I thought this was pretty outrageous, but there we go. GB Views at gbnews.com. It's the audacity to be able to say that you're going to breach her innocence, teaching her something that at 9, does she really have to know? And in the graphic detail, isn't
Why don't they segregate boys and girls for sex ed? I could see why a boy might need to understand what's happening to them.
Well, I only went ever to boys' schools, so that's all I knew anyway. And then we had any dirty bits taken out of our sexual education.
That's why you know nothing.
I know nothing.
That's why you've got so many children.
We had the Nuffield Science Pack, right? And it came in a plastic perspex cover. No, it went straight. It was delivered to the school, so you had to buy them, and they delivered to the school, and there were sort of modules 1 to 5 or 6 or so. So they took out module 3, which was about sex education, and that was taken out. And do you know why it was taken out? There was a picture of a naked woman in it.
Wow, that's outrageous.
It was
boys' school.
Outrageous. And I mean, again, I was from a family of all boys, so this was all new to me.
The thing.
I mean, the only woman I knew was my mother, and I never saw her naked
Quite right.
at any time. So, no, I didn't. Why would I see my mother naked?
Let's not talk about this.
No. But anyway, I didn't see, so then it was like on the black market, somebody would get a copy of the module 3, and then it was sort of passed around the school.
Gosh, how times have changed. Maybe they need to know at the age of internet, and they've all
people were very
all this
hairy
stuff
in those days. So they were.
It's too early, I can't cope.
I'm just telling you,
Yeah.
things are sort of
Not
different,
anymore,
maybe.
is that
No.
right?
GB Views at gbnews.com. Did you get the Nuffield Science Pack, modules 1 to 6? And what was module 3 like? Do you remember it? Paul Coit, his jaws hit the floor.
How am I supposed to follow that? I'm like, I'm shifting uncomfortably.
Well, I tell you how you couldn't follow that.
Yes, sir.
On the newspapers today, we have Chris Akabusi, right?
Yes, yes.
Who just light up any rumour.
Yeah, of course he does.
But there's a wonderful stat that you want to give us, because if people just don't know what Chris did, what he stands for, tell us.
Zarnell Hughes, in the athletics, in the Diamond League yesterday, broke the 200-metre men's record, which has been held for 30 years. John Regis, who, great relay friend of Chris Akabusi. So as I came through this morning, I said, "Oh, Chris," I said, "well, your record stood for a few years, did it?" And he said, "It still stands. 32 years, 400-metre hurdle record, the British record, which still stands to this day."
Gosh, you know, relay is tough enough. Hurdles, though.
No, they used to call it the man. I think they used to call it the man killer. I think they call it the person killer these days.
Yeah.
So it's the 400-metre hurdles, because not only is it tough, that lap, but also throwing in hurdles on top of that. Maybe they should throw in the, I don't know, 10,000-metre hurdles.
Well done, Chris.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Still there.
On that when he comes in. Here are the back pages, and we begin with the Star, and it warns that Harry Kane could be sold if he doesn't sign a new contract at Spurs. So basically, rather than risk him going on a free, Spurs have been told by their owner, Joe Lewis, sell him. Where will he be sold to? That opens up interest again from Manchester United. The Express leads with Brian's blessed after the Americans secured a memorable victory at the Open, and boy, he played well. Brian Harman, and he just kept going, so he did, and in torrential rain, absolutely horrendous. And finally, the Mirror focuses on the rain washing away England's hopes as Australia retains the Ashes at Old Trafford. But they were there, Paul. The Ashes were there for the taking, weren't they?
They were. Well, the game, without doubt, was. After day 3, England are looking unbelievable. I mean, Australia scored 317, England scored 592. We'd taken 5 wickets, and literally probably needed just a couple of hours. Just a couple of hours over the weekend probably would have sealed that, which would have put it level at 2-2, going from 2-0 down, going into that final game, and then we could have won the Ashes. Now, they've retained the Ashes, therefore, because we can't win it back from them.
Yeah.
We can draw the series. But, you know, it's interesting because everybody's now looking at it and thinking, right, now, what can we do about this in future? Because...
Well, I'll tell you what you could do. Why isn't cricket like tennis?
Yeah.
Why don't they have auditoriums, arenas, which have roofs that close when the weather's inclement?
It's a big stadium, though, isn't it? I mean, tennis, where you've got the centre court, it's not that big, but to have the whole thing enclosed, it shouldn't really be needed.
Well, they could do it at Cardiff, for instance.
Well, how about, though, just add an extra day? Maybe have an extra day on top.
It would still be raining.
Well, that's the thing, is that we could say, add an extra day, and then you go, well, if they lose 2 days, then how many extra days do you add? So that's a problem. It's just trying to look at it and thinking, this is just so unfair. The fact that it's the Ashes, that it's so important, and then it's been rained off. And then the other thing is that there's a lot of writers that are saying, well, let's look at the mistakes that were made. Johnny Bairstow hasn't played well. Maybe we shouldn't have declared when we did. Maybe we should have declared at certain times. You can do that with any sport. You can go through the minutiae. You can choose different things and say, that's where it went wrong. On the whole, I think England have been great. And I think this game they absolutely outplayed Australia so well. Okay. And to be ruined by the rain is just so unfortunate. But anyway, Thursday, the next one.
But then you had the Open, final day of the Open yesterday, and the rain had just come down in steroids. It was, you know, just a wall of rain.
Did you play in the rain, or would you walk away?
Well, as I was saying to Isabel earlier, as soon as your grip goes, I mean, you can't, when you get slimy grip handles, you know.
I tell you, this is a true story. I lost, you know, when you can't get the grip right. I played in a tournament, and anyway, I've hit this shot. The ball flew, but unfortunately, the the club flew out of my hand.
Flew with it.
And I swear this is true. I lost the club.
Yeah.
I lost the club. It was went over someone's fence. So I found the ball but lost the club. And I was the only person that actually lost more clubs than I had balls. But yeah, got to be careful. It's awful out there playing.
Harmon, though,
was terrific.
he was consistent. I mean, there were a few players chasing him, one of which was Rory McIlroy, who started off well, I think, after the third hole or whatever, but it was too much to ask of him, especially in those conditions.
Yeah, putting let him down, but whereas Harmon is a fantastic putter, anything from 10 foot, everything's dropping down. See, there was also people on the course. I mean, he was getting a bit of stick because, you know, the stuff he'd said about hunting. You know, he's a big... He likes to go killing things with bows and arrows and all this, and so there was a lot of people on the course are thinking, oh, we don't really like this guy, that were actually giving him a bit of stick and saying, well, oh, yeah, so you're going to collapse. It's going to get to the final round. And I thought he would be one of these players, never won a major, getting into the final round. We've seen it before. Remember Van der Velde back in '99? He was 5 shots clear, collapsed, and then everybody... and it all went bad. But he just kept going. Bump, bump, bump.
Well,
very good golf.
Congratulations to him.
Very good indeed.
Well done, well done. Paul, we'll see you again at 8:20. For the moment, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be discussing which former TV presenter has warned Gary Lineker to stick in his lane.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
18 minutes before 7 o'clock. Front pages of the papers this Monday look like this.
The Telegraph leading with pressure on travel companies to fly Brits out of Rhodes.
Times saying Rishi Sunak's planning to hold firm on net zero goals as he comes under pressure from the right side of his party, meaning the right wing.
In the Mail, Jeremy Hunt
right.
reveals in an emotional interview that his cancer was caught quickly by the NHS and describes how it has ravaged his family.
The Star, unfit Britons will get extra time to scuttle across Greenman crossings as pedestrians become older and more overweight. Do you know, it said there on 2 of those stories, use the word Brits. I can never say the word Brits.
Britons.
It was a term of, it was a derogatory term in Northern Ireland. And
I think it's probably quite often a derogatory term here, like Brits abroad is, you know.
I think it's the sort of thing that was sort of like spat out. So I would have to say Britons or people in the UK or whatever it is.
I'm with you on that, to be honest.
Used to be quite a lot of
Get that breadth out.
I think for headline writers, it's just fewer characters, isn't it? Squeeze the words in.
Could well be.
We're going through the papers this morning, joined by the former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, and the Olympian Chris Akabusi. And Dawn, you want to start with the
Hey, the man with the record. Never mind starting. Hey.
Coity, going to bung him a fiver. Yes, but thank you very much. Thank you very much.
How many years has that stood?
So, first book in 1990, last time 1992, and 2023 is still here.
Yes.
The thing I want to know, mate, is, right, I think relay is a tough enough game, but to then break your stride with hurdles must be really tough.
Actually, I think it's easier.
Why?
Because every 35 metres you've got something to think about other than the sheer pain and the lung busting and the lactic in your muscles. And you've also, it's technical, so you've got stride pattern to think about.
How many strides between hurdles?
So, people are different. Like Ed Moses could do 12 all the way around. He used to do 13s till 6, and then he used to change down from hurdle 7, 8, 9, 14s and the 15s home. But obviously it's dependent upon the weather, whether you've got wind in front, coming down the back straight in front of you. So there's a lot of... It's a technical event, and I think that the mile record is very vulnerable. I think that it just requires some sprinters who can run 44 seconds for the 400 to change. At the moment, most hurdlers can barely break 47 seconds in the flat. So you've got no chance of breaking my record then. So, I mean, the best guy was Di Green. He was a world champion. But again, I don't think he could break 46 seconds. So...
Well, what do you care?
No,
but
I've had it for 30 years. I'm happy to pass it on.
Yeah.
It's quite nice to keep hold of it, I'd imagine.
He really didn't want to talk about any of that, by the way, guys. No, I'm not talking about but... Finish but...
Back to the real world,
Dawn, let's sort of turn our attention to something a bit more serious. And the pictures, I mean, genuinely Armageddon-like, aren't they, from the island of Rhodes?
And it is on the front page of every single newspaper, aside from the Daily Mail, which is a strange one we'll come on to later. But the headlines, Isabel, our terror, flight to hell, run for your lives, you know, hell on earth. I mean, and the pictures just speak for themselves. They are horrific. It does actually look like Armageddon. The Mirror have used a very big picture of a lady called Kirsty Hunter is in Rhodes with a mask on, and the sky behind her is bright orange. I mean, it does look... It just looks terrifying, to be honest with you. Now, a lot of these people are paid an awful lot of money. We know how important holidays are. They're paid an awful lot of money, thousands of pounds, and they're having to leave these hotels, leave all their belongings. Sometimes the hotels are actually burnt down, so they've lost everything. So they're literally standing there in their swimwear with a towel wrapped around them and nothing else, and they're being evacuated to the coast. And there is still, I know Simon Cord was talking about it earlier on, there is still this issue with flights still going in and taking people in, and the holiday companies themselves are not actually in evidence at the airport. So there are people at the airports going, well, the Greeks are being very helpful. They're helping, and the volunteers are helping, supplying water, etc., etc. But the holiday companies surely have some responsibility to the clients they have out there.
Yeah, and the government sending out 5 staff from the Foreign Office and indeed a Red Cross rapid deployment team.
Yes.
And yet there's some holiday reps still sending out plane loads of
it doesn't make any sense, does it? And obviously now it's spread to Corfu, and, you know, it must be terrifying if you are out there, or if you're planning to go out there. What are you meant to do? Would you go? I mean, but, you know, can you claim it on your insurance? So many questions. It's just, as I said, you know, to anyone out there, you know, thoughts with them. It's a horrible experience.
So, Chris, what do you make then of the story on the front page of the Times? The headline is Tory retreat from green policies in order to woo voters.
Yeah, so you can understand this is on the back of Uxbridge by-election and the fact that it was a surprise that the Conservatives held on to that seat and put it down to Sadiq Khan and his ULIS. And so...
Ultra-low emission zone.
Ultra-low emission zone.
Levy, yeah.
Absolutely right. So the right wing of the Conservative Party was saying, well, let's think about this. This is an opportunity. You could see that Keir Starmer was sort of brought upright when he saw what happened. And so the Tories are thinking that, well, should we rethink some of our strategy going forward? Now, Mr Sunak, the Prime Minister, said that he's not going to row back on his firm commitments for net zero, but it's actually things like, are we really going to ban petrol and diesel cars or buy any more petrol and diesel cars by 2030?
Do you think it's a vote winner?
Yes, so I think that there was a lot of the general public, maybe the silent majority, who are scratching their heads about some of this net zero and the cost implications of net zero and the rush towards it. Our small little island taking it on the chin while we're outsourcing our manufacturing.
Well, Dawn is draped in green this morning. What's your view on that question? Do you think they would gain votes?
Well, I think if you do look at the Uxbridge by-election, that was basically a referendum, wasn't it, on ULEZ, as the ultra-low emission zone, and the green issues around it. And I think most people support this cause, but
they support the green cause.
I think most people do support the green cause. I think you look at the front pages about what's going on in Greece at the moment. I think most people support it, but can we afford it? I think that's the issue a lot of people have. To upgrade your car to an electric car is extortionately expensive. Heat pumps in your housing, we can't afford it. And it's not just the Conservative Party that are thinking about this. I mean, Labour have done one of the U-turns on their manifesto pledge, 28 billion a year to fund green investment pledges. They've rowed back on that one. So both parties are now thinking, is this the way to go at the moment? And as I said, that
during
by-election...
the cost of living crisis.
During the cost of living. We need to do it, but we can't afford it.
So just do it more slowly. Folks, your views very strange camera shots there. You do to gbviews@gbnews.com. Please let us know your take on that.
Yeah, it's interesting, Chris. I want to go to the front of the Express next, because this is Rishi Sunak saying we're not going to concrete over the countryside. So it's kind of staying with the sort of green matters, if you like. But this is in response to the claim they're going to make today that they are reaching their manifesto pledge of building 1 million homes, which we think comes to about 200,000 a year.
Yeah, so 2019, 2024, they pledged to make 1 million homes, and they believe that they will do that in their time that they've got as a government. Yeah, they're saying that I heard you, Eamonn, speaking with I forgot the chap here earlier on, about repurposing, for example, some of the shops that are on the high streets that are falling into disrepair. They're not being used, or if they are, they're nail bars and charity shops, and actually repurposing those homes. The infrastructure's already there for schools. I do believe that actually if you'd do repurpose some of those shops, you would then re-encourage the corner shop, because the corner shop would then be able to flourish to support the personnel that are living in these repurposed charity shops and commercial buildings. Home extensions are being encouraged. So a real drive to reinstigate our housing market by utilising the stock that's already there, whether it's private residents redeveloping the homes or redeveloping the commercial shops. I think it's a great idea. We don't need to go and start afresh on greenfield sites.
OK. Chris, got to leave it there. Dawn, thank you both very much indeed. The guys are going to be back in 40 minutes' time.
We're turning our attention to Harry and Meghan. You might have heard lots of rumours swirling about the couple, especially over the weekend, that their relationship is on the rocks. It's been suggested the couple are taking some time apart.
OK, so what sort of validity are there to these rumours? Live from Los Angeles, Kinsey Schofield will tell us more. So, Kinsey, as I understand it, the rumour mill is saying if she, Meghan, was to be able to be independent financially or, have her own business unrelated to Harry, it would make a fragile situation more fragile.
That's absolutely, Eamonn. That was released on my podcast over the weekend. I talked to the founder of Crazy Days and Nights, who's really been ahead of the curve on all of these Harry and Meghan stories. But the avalanche of these rumors started with Radar Online, and the headline was so aggressive: Harry and Meghan trial separation, nasty fights, humiliation, and failure lead to the Prince to pursue peace. So what Radar is saying is that they are taking a temporary time apart just so that Harry can try to find... Harry does not like the chaos of Los Angeles. Harry does not like the pursuits of Hollywood, according to some of these reports. I want to stress that people close to Harry and Meghan allegedly have told Page Six that these rumors are not true. Omid Scobie tweeting, these rumors are not true. However, I would argue Omid Scobie has made more money off of Harry and Meghan than the Buckingham Palace gift shop ever could. But these rumors are not stopping. You know, it's like a bleed, that it's like a wound that won't heal. You're hearing from more and more people. One of the rumors is that Meghan has set up shop in a hotel suite across from her agency, William Morris Endeavour, and that she has her eyes set on bigger opportunities. She wants to be a power player in Hollywood, and that this is not the direction that Harry has any desire to go. They're spending more time apart. And how does any relationship function in that capacity?
Yeah, I mean, we hear it time and again with celebrity couples that actually it's sort of chicken and the egg. Nobody really knows what started it, but when the press start reporting it, even if there weren't problems, it creates problems, because then they're discussing, have we got problems in our relationship? Is our relationship okay? So it almost makes me think, even if it's not true, this will be causing problems for them.
I mean, I don't think anybody is pursuing this because they want to see it happen. I do think that where there's smoke, there is fire. And, you know, the Demois is a gossip site over here that's been claiming that that they live separately. That's been a rumor that's been circulating for a while that I think I told you guys about a few weeks ago. So then to have Radar Online come on the scene and say that they are taking a trial separation, it just seems that like there are too many separate outlets coming out and saying very similar stories. Obviously, I hope it's not true, because I don't root for anybody's marriage to fail, but I can't imagine, truthfully, what it's like to have so much pressure on you. The entire world is watching, and they have had a lot of failures professionally over the last few years, and that's got to create intense stress in their household.
And small kids.
Thanks, Kinsey. That's our roundup to start the week. We'll speak again soon. Thank you very much indeed.
Here's the weather forecast with Marco Petenia.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, I'm Marco Petenia. Here's your latest weather update from the Met Office. We'll see outbreaks of rain clear away to the south-east of the UK through the day today, giving way to a mix of sunshine and showers, coupled with a fairly cool breeze. It's certainly a fairly wet picture across the south and south-east through the morning. We'll see some heavy bursts of rain in places, but as I say, brighter skies tucking in from the north. So as we head into the afternoon, we'll see many places having some sunny spells, coupled, yes, with a few showers, particularly towards the north and northwest, those feeding down in that cooler north to northwesterly airstream. It's certainly feeling fairly chilly out and about towards the north of the UK in that breeze. Temperatures no better than 16 or 17 Celsius. Down towards the south and southeast, we should see a high of 19 or 20. 20 is 68 in Fahrenheit. As we go through the evening, those showers will tend to ease, particularly towards the south and east. Still some feeding in there towards the north and west of Scotland. One or two of those still on the heavy side too. With the clear spells down towards the southeast, turning a little bit chilly in some rural spots. But I think the coldest temperatures will be reserved for the rural spots towards the north. Here dipping down to around about 7 or 8 degrees by Tuesday morning. As for Tuesday itself, another day of sunshine and showers is on the cards. The showers pretty well scattered towards the south and east. Most of those reserved again for the northwest of the UK, and again a few of those will be on the heavy side. Temperatures still disappointing for late July, peaking at around about the high teens towards the north of the UK, possibly a high of 19 or 20 down towards the southeast, and again 20 is 68 in Fahrenheit. That's pretty much it for me. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye for now.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're going to have the latest from Rhodes as airlines are urged to rescue British families from what's described as hell on earth, and we've got people with stories to tell.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my new show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m, where real people get to meet those in power and hold them to account. Every week, we'll be hearing your views from up and down the country in the real world. Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Travel companies scramble to repatriate British families after thousands flee wildfires in Rhodes.
Hello there, very good morning to you. It is 7 o'clock on the dot on this Monday, 24th of July. You're tuned into Breakfast on GB News. Eamonn and Isabel here until 9:30.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The government's putting pressure on airlines to rescue British families in Rhodes after tens of thousands were forced to flee wildfires that engulfed their accommodation. Displaced holidaymakers described the scenes as like hell on earth.
It comes as Rishi Sunak faces a split within his own party on his commitment to net zero following the Conservative victory in Uxbridge, seen by many as a rejection of green policies.
The Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, will today announce new plans to tackle the housing crisis with proposals to relax rules on extensions and give more flexibility to turn shops into homes.
Jeremy Hunt has revealed how his family has been devastated by cancer. As he speaks out about his own diagnosis being caught early by the NHS, the Chancellor has called for Britain to become a leader in the global fight against the disease, which took both his parents and affected his brother.
And we'll have your latest weather picture.
We're seeing a lot of unsettled weather across the UK over the weekend. Will we hold on to that theme during the week ahead? Well, the picture behind me sets the scene quite nicely, but I'll give you more details later.
Now, Rhodes is going to lead our news today, and it is surprising, I think it's surprising that the lack of sympathy that so many people who've got in touch today are having towards people who are there having their holiday, experiencing what is going on, describing all of this as a hell on earth. Betty from Highcliffe says we have a housing crisis, we have an economic crisis, we have a health crisis, and let's not forget the climate crisis. Can we please stop catastrophising everything? There are problems in many fields, but stop calling everything a crisis. They are difficulties to be overcome.
Yeah, there's a few similar ones, and also people with sympathy, of course, because incredibly traumatic to be there on holiday in your flip-flops, perhaps even in your swimming costume, and running down the beach thinking that you might not make it because there was a fire burning down your hotel.
Yeah, and you've no
terrible
clothes to fly back in, or whatever way it goes. But meanwhile, the government has decided what they're going to do is put pressure on a lot of airlines to bring British tourists affected by these wildfires in Rhodes back home.
And ministers are holding emergency meetings. EasyJet has announced it's going to run repatriation flights to rescue holidaymakers, with 2 taking place today.
So it's not only Rhodes, Corfu is the latest Greek island to issue an evacuation order due to flies. Let's cross now to our reporter Ray Addison. Ray's at Gatwick this morning, seeing the comings and the goings. What have you got to report, Ray?
Well, hundreds of British tourists will be returning here to Gatwick Airport today on those repatriation flights. EasyJet announcing late last night that they were putting on 2 planes, an A320 and an A321 this afternoon, and then a third one tomorrow as well. They also say they're going to keep under review whether they need to send more rescue flights. In total, around 400 British tourists will be on those flights this afternoon, due to arrive about 2:35 and then 3:25. However, to caveat that, should say that EasyJet flights and a lot of other operators overnight experiencing delays of around an hour and a half to 2 hours, which may not sound that severe. However, if you've had to flee from your hotel and have been living in rough conditions, as many people have had to do as they've made their way to the airport, it's just adding to the burden of that experience. EasyJet Holidays as well announcing last night that they have cancelled all EasyJet holidays departing to Rhodes up to and including tomorrow. Customers, they say, will get a full refund. One wonders whether that might be extended unless the wildfire is able to be brought more under control. Of course, British tourists among 19,000 people forced to flee for their lives as that wildfire spread from the mountainous areas. People reporting being evacuated from their hotels in the middle of the night, having to leave their belongings behind. Many saying they got separated from their families. Others saying they had to wade into the ocean to get to rescue boats to try and get some help. Eyewitnesses on social media saying when they did get to the airport, reporting chaotic scenes at Rhodes International Airport. Now, we have heard today the British Foreign Office spokesperson confirming that a rapid deployment team has now arrived on Rhodes to support travel operators in bringing UK tourists home. And Gatwick Airport saying if you are going to fly, please make sure you have travel insurance that does include flight disruption.
OK, Ray, thank you very much indeed. Let's now bring in Nathan Rao, who also joins us in the studio. Weather is his field as a weather journalist and all of this. Look, here's a comment. Andrew's got in touch with us. He says, I used to live and work there. Greece burns every year. Why is the media blaming it all in climate change? So, you know, he goes back 16 years. But there is a definite change, is there not, in what is happening?
Yes. I think the topic of climate change is a multifaceted beast. I mean, first of all, we look at what's happening in Europe. Now, these are temperatures that are extraordinary. The last time I was in here, I was telling you that I have never written about such sustained temperatures of this magnitude in my entire career. I remember looking at a map here and they're between 35 and 40 right across Europe. Low humidity, and we're seeing what's happening in Rhodes. Now, the issue comes to climate change, and I know there is a lot of contention around this subject, and I am very open to having a reasoned and rational debate about this, because I think the time has come for us to have that. The climate has changed cyclically over the millennia. We know that. It has changed due to many natural phenomena. Radiation from the sun, changes in the structure of the surface of the Earth, changes in the atmospheric structure, all of those things. But what people are seeing at the moment seems to be an exponential rise in climate, and that seems to be linked, due to the science is showing, to carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases.
We've been talking about this weather dome, particularly over southern Europe, for, a week now, but it seems to be that the wind has had a huge impact, particularly in Rhodes. A friend of mine flew out there on Saturday. She was aware that there were a few problems, but apparently 2 o'clock Saturday afternoon, the wind direction changed and her whole resort burnt down. Yes,
and this is the absolute danger with this. What we are now into is almost 2 weeks of this astonishing heat wave that has turned Europe into a tinderbox. It's turned Rhodes into a tinderbox. It has turned Corfu. There is very low humidity at the moment, and it hasn't rained because of this high pressure, and that is clear blue skies, strong sunshine at this time of year over the continent, which gets stronger sunshine than we do. The ground is drying out. It's not sweating, for want of a better word, to cool down, because there's been no rain. It is very dry. The foliage, the flora out there is very combustible, and a change of wind will drive these wildfires. Now, we're seeing this in Rhodes. I mean, these are horrific pictures. These must be terrifying for the people that are out there. But Rhodes at the moment, now the whole of Europe has been affected by this heat wave, under this heat dome, this high pressure that has dried it out and is bringing astonishingly high temperatures that don't seem to be looking like they're going to abate. And the fear is, we're seeing Rhodes at the moment, but what is this going to lead to, and when is this going to end, and what are the implications for that? Not only for people going there at the moment, but what are the long-term implications for, for this heat wave in Europe for us? What does this mean for all of us?
Well, I think the big implication, I think a lot of people may well be sympathetic to the fact that things are changing. What they're not sympathetic about, it seems to me, is paying for it, and paying for it at what to them seems over a very short period of time.
Yeah, and I sort of agree with this, and you've got to look at whether and this comes down to whether people believe that is there anything we can do about the climate. The climate, I'm not going to say crisis because I know it gets people worked out, but the situation. And as I've said, I'm a huge fan of actually people coming together and having a sensible, rational debate about this, because it needs to happen, in a non-hysterical way. There is some evidence, there are authors out there who've written that small changes, a 10% change in the behaviour of most people in the Western world would bring the reduction in climate that we need. Water pumps instead of gas heaters going to electricity. It doesn't mean huge changes.
It's a cost of living crisis, Nathan.
But it is,
people are already hurting financially, and talking about ULERs specifically in London, the Labour Party even saying that this has become a sort of class issue, that working class people cannot afford to get new cars.
Absolutely.
Well, John here is saying that he thinks the investment in solar panels and heat pumps and whatever should be from the utility companies, and then they get the money back from us, which takes the main onus off the consumer. And also there just seems to be this whole situation that people do not believe, Nathan, that India, China, Brazil
are pulling their weight.
Are pulling their weight.
And I would say there is some truth in that. I absolutely would. I mean, we are being told to do things ourselves that are going to cost us money during a cost of living crisis and change our way of life. And it appears to be that countries like India and China, as you mentioned, are not doing the same amount of weight pulling as they should be. The fact of the matter is, the climate, and I'm not going to, in my role, I have to sort of remain slightly impartial to this because I'm a journalist, I'm not a climate activist or anything like that. And I have to say, I do think, the damage done by this extreme activism to the conversation that we should be having sensibly worries me. I would rather that people, rather than gluing themselves to paintings and holding up people, would actually engage people to have a conversation and guide people to the science and allow people to do their research and make their own minds up about what changes they want to make. But the fact remains, there was a new carbon dioxide record set in 2022, and this is from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. That is 417 parts per millimetre. That is the rise in the past 60 years is 100 times faster than what would be a normal increase. And there is some evidence that climate change is happening at 10 times faster than the normal rate. As I said, there is a natural cyclical climate change that's happened, has been observed and has been verified over millennia, but it seems to be happening faster, and it seems to be year after year we are having these conversations about dramatic weather events, tragic weather events that all seem to come back to this thing of, is our climate changing? Is it time that we do something about it, or at least talk about it sensibly?
Nathan, appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. Whether that constitutes a crisis or not, you decide.
Now, the Levelling Up Secretary, Michael Gove, will today announce new plans to tackle the housing crisis, another crisis for you, with proposals to relax rules on extensions and give more flexibility to turn shops into homes.
Do you know where I would say there's also a crisis? Social care.
There's a lot of crises.
I would say social care is something, and I think you neglect social care at your cost because we're all going to need it at some stage. But the Prime Minister has also said that Britain's new housing will be focused in cities, as he vows not to concrete over the countryside. Deputy Political Editor Tom Harwood has more on this for us. What have you got to say, Tom?
Well, it's interesting, Eamonn. You describe it there as a housing crisis. Perhaps a more apt word would be a housing shortage. The United Kingdom is 4 million homes short, according to the Centre for Cities, in terms of where we would need to be to even reach the European average in terms of houses per population. And so the government today is finally, perhaps, getting on the front foot on this issue. If we've heard what Rishi Sunak has said over the last year or so on the issue of housing, the first thing that comes to mind mind might be the abolition of those mandatory targets for councils to build houses to get to 300,000 a year. It might be the government's plans to stop construction on land designated as greenbelt land, despite the fact that 11% of brownfield sites actually are classified peculiarly as greenbelt land. But today we're hearing pro-building policies from the government, although very limited and specific in where they will apply. This is about densifying urban areas, turning shops and offices into housing, and indeed allowing people to build up where they live in certain circumstances. We're also going to hear something very interesting about a new urban quarter in Cambridge, one of these fast-growing cities developed on the knowledge economy, which of course is the growing part of perhaps future growth in the United Kingdom. A lot more housing in a very specific area of Cambridge as well, but clearly the government wanting to not rock the boat in its more rural constituencies, in its home county constituencies, where there won't be this sort of planning liberalisation.
OK, Tom, thanks very much indeed.
Tom's talking about those constituencies. Why do you not want more housing in your area? I mean, there's some lovely housing developments, whether they're private or social. But why does it necessarily mean that building 30 houses, 50 houses, 100 houses?
Do you know why? Because they're not building new schools and they're not building new doctors, GPs and so forth. And so people see not only, beautiful previous fields turned into huge housing estates, but then the roads are gridlock and there's no infrastructure.
They just see more people and less services, more demand on the services.
I think it's tough.
Right, is that a crisis or not? James Heal, the political correspondent for The Spectator. What have you got to say about this, James?
Yeah, well, it's obviously, as Tom was saying there, a chance for the government to try and address some of these underlying issues here. And obviously, it's something of key interest to the voting coalition as well, because a lot of young people aren't voting Conservatives now. 15% of 35 to 25-year-olds are only going to vote Tory in the next election. And really, I think this is a belated attempt to try to give them the kind of homes and new places they need to live.
Stephen from Nottingham's emailed in, after 13 years, suddenly there's an announcement about relaxing planning laws so as to increase stock. Blah, blah, blah. Same old smoke and mirrors.
I think that's probably the reaction of a lot of people today who are watching this, particularly in the housing world, who said, oh, we've seen some of the initiatives before. But actually, as you say, 2.2 million homes over 13 years isn't the kind of level that Britain needs to keep up.
Also, interesting point from Stephen, government doesn't build homes, developers have to build housing and they have to get planning permission for private sales. And that's an interesting point, trying to claim the credit for building 1 million homes.
Quite, and I think today's announcement is really interesting because, as Tom was saying there about the targets that were relaxed last year, if you look at actually debates in Parliament around this, the legislation has been changed, the planning laws aren't being changed. This is an attempt to kind of do things in terms of regulation. It's much more piecemeal than a lot of people who want to see more houses would like to have actually done.
In terms of
developments, Prince Charles, he has this place, which is just beautiful. It looks beautiful. It looks, James, it has whatever it is, 10 houses and then it has a shop and then it has 10 houses and it has, I don't know, a GP surgery or whatever it happens to be. Considered planning, I just don't understand why it's so difficult. Government, you are in charge. Be in charge. Tell people what they're going to live with.
I think that's definitely a huge part of it, is having more sympathetic development, building beautiful streets. I think also there's a real case to be looking at the wider system as well. So other countries, for instance, the local councils have a vested interest because they control things like taxation in terms of encouraging local building. At the moment, I think the conversation we're having today around this is why would local residents support? Because as Isabel says, you're not going to have the local schools, the local infrastructure support that. What is the kind of vested interest in that? So it's really not just about looking at planning and the houses in abstract. It's about, as you say, Eamonn, looking at the designs, but also kind of looking at ways in which you can incentivise the local economy so people want to have more houses there rather than seeing it as a net negative.
Can we talk about the by-election results? The Conservatives very pleased with their sort of tactic in Uxbridge of making it a single issue, effectively a referendum on the ultra-low emission zone. Can that be extrapolated more widely into a vote against green policies? Because we're hearing from a whole section, including Michael Gove, who's saying there shouldn't be a net zero crusade. We also heard from Lord Frost and Jacob Jacob Rees-Mogg that the Tories should scale back their green plans.
I mean, I'm sceptical of that strategy for several reasons. I think, first of all, I think that it was a particular issue on the kind of fringes of London to do with ULEZ, and it's more to do with the cities, which are not really the places the Conservatives are going to be looking to win seats at the next election. What it really is about is a sort of wedge issue, and those are the issues they can use against Labour, and they need to be popular issues, salient issues, and ones where they can pin responsibility on Labour. And that's what really did for them did for the party in Uxbridge. I think they're going to struggle to find those. They're going to look at things like transgender rights, etc. But in terms of the green agenda, both parties have been committed to it, and it's more around tinkering around the edges rather than kind of a whole-scale rejection of net zero, which has been a priority target for Conservative governments for 5 years now. Or 4 years.
Top man, James. Thanks very much indeed.
Did we want a quick word about Jeremy Hunt? Because that was something I didn't know when I went to bed last night, and this announcement that he has had recently survived cancer, but unfortunately it claimed his own parents, and his brother's still battling it, and it seems it's a very personal sort of crusade that he's launching against cancer.
It is, and of course Jeremy Hunt was the longest-serving Conservative Health Secretary as well, and he's really immersed in the issue of the NHS, etc. And really, I think today's announcement is about trying to tie in with what the government's doing on early identification of cancer and better treatment in the future. As you say, both his parents died of it, his brother's got sarcoma, and it's basically the Conservatives' attempt to try to humanise what's going on in terms of making the most of that announcement that since 2010 they've invested 50% more in early identification for cancer and make it a big thing ahead of a big screening planning announcement this summer.
Well, we wish him well. Pleased to hear that
We wish him and his brother well throughout all of this. James, appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. And just also on housing, it's amazing, as I said, I spent the weekend in Manchester, and it's amazing how Manchester has gone from a low-roof city to skyscrapers everywhere, and I mean everywhere. I used to live in Manchester, and the Manchester I knew from the mid-80s through into the early 90s is unrecognisable as to what you have now. Now, maybe there's a huge need for all of this, as we were talking about earlier on, but my goodness me, the idea of living in a little box and they go up 35 floors or whatever, and London, not far from here, we're on our way home, it has to be a quality to things, and more people are prepared to pay for what seems to me like no quality of life. Nowhere where you can hang your washing, nowhere you can have a barbecue, nowhere you can open your window.
Yes, this is true. I mean, the philosophy is up, not out, isn't it?
Definitely.
That's fine for the people who are out, but the people who have to go up, I do think it's a difficult dilemma. Any solutions, send them our way. Go on.
Yeah, I was going to say very shortly we're going to be talking about things that go up. So stay tuned for that.
About sex education. That's a very clever link there.
Well, I was just going to say, it's a pity these headlines get in the way, but here we go. The City Minister has summoned bank chiefs to discuss... Look, he looks very pleased with himself, doesn't he? Ooh, kick the cat. Nope. To protect customers following the controversy around Coutts cutting ties with Nigel Farage. He is Andrew Griffith, and he will write to chief executives of 19 banks saying that politically exposed persons are being used disproportionately.
Spain is set for political gridlock after its centre-right party failed to clinch a decisive majority in the general election. Both major parties have declared victory, but neither side has a clear path to forming a government. Negotiations by the two blocs will start after a new parliament convenes on the 17th of August.
And one of Wales' most popular spirits is now officially protected after it secured special status. Single malt Welsh whisky joins other famous Welsh products such as beef, lamb and leeks in getting protected status, which ensures it's guarded against imitation and misuse. Time to check in on the weather because you don't know what it's doing. Yesterday I thought in the morning I'll go and sit in the sunshine, read the newspapers, whatever. So I sat out, got 20 minutes, then started to rain. I thought, oh, I'll go in.
I don't know.
And then I sat out again, and the sun came out again, and it was another half hour, 20 minutes. And then it started to rain, and then I just gave up going in and out.
April showers in July. Well, here's the forecast with Marco Patenia and all the details.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, I'm Marco Patenia. Here's your latest weather update from the Met Office. We'll see outbreaks of rain clear away to the south-east of the UK through the day today, giving way to a mix of sunshine and showers, coupled with a fairly cool breeze. It's certainly a fairly wet picture across the south and south-east through the morning. We'll see some heavy bursts of rain in places, but I say brighter skies tucking in from the north. So as we head into the afternoon, we'll see many places having some sunny spells, coupled, yes, with a few showers, particularly towards the north and northwest, those feeding down in that cooler north to northwesterly airstream. It's certainly feeling fairly chilly out and about towards the north of the UK in that breeze. Temperatures no better than 16 or 17 Celsius. Down towards the south and southeast, we should see a high of 19 or 20. 20 is 68 in Fahrenheit. As we go through the evening, those showers will tend to ease, particularly towards the south and east. Still some feeding in there towards the north and west of Scotland. One or two of those still on the heavy side too. With the clear spells down towards the southeast, turning a little bit chilly in some rural spots. But I think the coldest temperatures will be reserved for the rural spots towards the north, here dipping down to around about 7 or 8 degrees by Tuesday morning. As for Tuesday itself, another day of sunshine and showers is on the cards. The showers pretty well scattered towards the south and east. Most of those reserved again for the northwest of the UK, and again a few of those will be on the heavy side. Temperatures still disappointing for late July, peaking at around about the high teens towards the north of the UK, possibly a high of 19 or 20 down towards the southeast, and again 20 is 68 in Fahrenheit. That's pretty much it from me. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye for now.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, after a Christian father pulled his daughter out of school due to the sex education she was being taught, we'll be asking this morning if parents should have to consent to the material their children are being taught.
Well, wait till you hear what she was being taught and shown.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
In about half an hour's time at 8 o'clock, you're going to hear the ordeal of a woman who fled from the fires in Rhodes. She was with her husband and 3 teenagers walking for almost 3 hours. She had to keep scurrying along the beach as the fire chased them.
And at 8:45, we'll ask the government what they're doing to help people stranded there as they urge airlines to rescue British families.
And you can have your say, as you've been doing very well throughout the programme this morning, gbviews@gbnews.com, or you can tweet at GB News.
Should we talk about sex now?
Well, there's a song.
Talk about sex, baby.
Let's talk about you and me.
Yeah, how much should we talk about it? That's the big talking point this morning. Concerns over sex education lessons in schools are rising once again. This is after
no one has
Christian
ever talked
father.
to me about sex.
Oh, bless you.
But it's true.
I don't want to ask how you knew what to do. But I am.
Sort of just natural.
Yeah, OK. Well, a Christian father removed his 9-year-old daughter from school after she was taught about boys having wet dreams, erections
What is that
other male things.
Well, you see, I was from a family of all boys. My mother, there was just no talk about anything.
Well, that's how it was in the Dark Ages.
Well, yeah, but then it leaves you with that thing. It leaves me that I would be hesitant of talking about those things. And there's a difference between what you've got to mechanically know and what you morally should know.
Well, parent Michael Doherty was finally allowed to see the materials after weeks of battling with the primary school to get access. So we're asking if it's acceptable for children to be shown material without the permission of the parents.
Well, Doherty's case is very interesting. He's religious. He found it strange. He just said, well, you're teaching my daughter who's 9 sex education. What are you teaching her? Then he wasn't allowed to pull out, pardon the phrase, from the education lessons. She had to do them, they said, and then they showed him what she was being taught, and he just thought, no way, Jose. Anyway, let's talk about all of this one. Sex therapist Emiliana Silvestri says sex education is as important as anything else on the curriculum, like maths and English.
But columnist at the Catholic Universe Weekly, Caroline Farrell, says that schools are there to educate children, not to indoctrinate them. So we welcome you both. A very good morning to you. Emiliana, you think, I suppose, then, this is a bit like biology, just understanding the mechanics of the body?
Well, there's so much more to it. I mean, I'm a sex therapist for a living, and I work with adults that are so confused about sex. They couldn't possibly explain it to their children. They don't understand sex themselves. I'd like to ask the woman I'm on with today if she could even tell me about men's sex hormones, testosterone, and if we think that parents should be teaching this, I'm not sure that's a wise idea, because we have an epidemic of people very confused and embarrassed about talking about one of the most beautiful subjects that we have to talk about, the reason we're all here. And schools need to be teaching this so that children can grow up with a healthy understanding of sex and know about boundaries and how their bodies work. It's science, it's biology, and it's a beautiful subject.
Well, Emiliana, it's very interesting talking to you, because you have to deal with it at the adult end of things, people's knowledge.
Yeah, I work with young people too.
Yeah, but I suppose what you're talking about there is things that people didn't gather or glean early on in their lives, and you're having to...
And the thing is, Eamonn, is that now children are turning to the internet to learn about sex, which is far more damaging than if the education system sets up an appropriate curriculum to teach us all properly, rather than young people turning to the internet and getting all sorts of terrible messages about sex, not understanding anything about the body. It's far wiser that we as a society create this in our education system.
But Caroline, I suppose the question is, how young is too young?
Well, there's so much to take issue with. Firstly, I'm all for people talking about sex, but we need to empower parents to be able to talk about it with their children. You know, every single family is going to have a different set of values, and it's really important that families feel empowered that they can talk about this with their own children, because families know their own children best. They know when children are ready for certain bits of information. And in fact, the story that we saw at the weekend was particularly damaging, because as a parent, if your school says to you, right, okay, we're just going to be talking to your children about puberty, about the changes that they go through, then you of course would say, yes, that's fine. And then you learn precisely what it is they've been teaching very, very young children. So yes, parents should be allowed to see exactly what is on the curriculum and should be allowed to withdraw their children if necessary. And it's not just, of course, we understand that primary school children, we understand that girls are having their periods age 10, and we need children to be given, you know, the pertinent information that's age appropriate. But actually what is happening is that children are being taught about niche sexual practices, things like choking, BDSM. They're being taught things that are designed to sort of sexualize them, and they're being taught gender theory in school as well. So this idea that, you know,
Caroline, they're not, oh dear, they're not being taught this stuff so that they can get into it. They're being taught this stuff because it's all over the internet. And if they are taught it, they can then be taught boundaries, and they don't have to do that stuff.
Excuse me, I have 5 children. I'm very well aware of what
Caroline,
children are being
if you have 5 children, tell me.
Let Caroline just finish her point first before we'll come back to you, Emiliana.
Okay. You know, this is crazy to say. It's, you know, as Eamonn said, he didn't have formal sex education in schools. You know, children have so much on the curriculum, you know, and we know that since lockdown, we've had literacy rates falling, we've had numeracy rates falling. Actually, yes, children should be taught the basics in sex education, but they shouldn't actually be taught these niche sexual practices.
Okay,
you know,
Emiliana?
Thank you, Isabel. They're not being taught these niche sexual practices. The problem,
we
Caroline,
know
is that
that
when
they
Eamonn was...
There is report after report that they are. That children are being taught things like how they should be washing after sex. When they're 11, they're being taught things about choking. They're being told to research pornography on the internet. Parent after parent is seeing this.
Let's let Emiliana have her say.
Caroline, can you tell me how often a man produces testosterone? If you've got 5 children and you think we should teach them about sex, can you tell me how often a man produces testosterone?
I suspect it's every day, but that's irrelevant.
Every 15 minutes. Can you tell me how often you as a woman produces testosterone, the sex hormone?
That is just a biological fact. That is nothing to do with what children are being taught, and parents are being shut out of what their children are taught.
You can't tell me about the male and female sex hormone, but you want to
need
teach
to
your
know
kids.
how often a man produces testosterone. I mean, fine, that's just a fact, and nobody would object to that basic fact being taught. But that's not what is happening in schools.
Caroline.
And this is why parent after parent are coming back with, oh my goodness, look what they are teaching my young child.
Yeah,
you know,
I totally agree with you, Caroline, that the system needs to create an appropriate subject matter for this. I appreciate that what they might currently have isn't good enough, but it's absolutely, if we rely on parents, when you're a parent to 5 children, you can't tell me anything about sex hormones or when we create testosterone, when a man does. This is vital for relationships and sex.
Me knowing a fact about sex hormones has nothing to do with talking to my child or to my children about appropriate sex and
Can
relationships.
I ask a question?
You know, that's crazy. You know, and actually, if you don't think that parents know enough, then you should be empowering parents to have these conversations with their children instead of saying to parents, you're so useless, you're not good enough, leave it to the professionals who want to completely sexualize your children. That's just not good enough, Amelia. Stop trying to patronize me and empower parents.
OK, can I ask you, Caroline, just on the specific case, because we're talking about 9-year-old children, and Emiliana, in this instance, it wasn't about choking or any of those things. It was specifically about erections and wet dreams and the like. Would you have a problem with your 9-year-old daughter being taught that? And can I ask you, Caroline, if you were to separate and segregate the sexes, could that be a workaround? Because I can understand the argument that actually boys need to know what's going on. That could be quite upsetting.
Absolutely, and that was an argument I was going to make. So, yes, I think this shows how sex education is more effective if the sexes are segregated. I know girls particularly feel uncomfortable being in with boys. Every single child I know who starts sex ed in schools just says it's cringeworthy, it's embarrassing, we don't like it. And certainly, yes, I would have a problem with my 9-year-old daughter being taught this about boys. It's wholly inappropriate. I'd much rather that she learned about what was going to happen to her own body. And of course, I have a son as well. I have an 8-year-old son. I wouldn't mind him learning about this, but at an age when it's age appropriate to do so that children learn that there's nothing wrong with their bodies, that, you know, this is how their bodies are supposed to work. I'm not about, you know, inducing shame, but actually a 9-year-old girl doesn't need to know what boys who are having erections and wet dreams, they don't need to know about that until much, much older.
Just really quickly want to let Emiliana have a final say. This email came in from Lynette. My grandson was sent home from school last week because he passed out during a sex ed lesson which showed a video of female genital mutilation. He's 11 years old. It's outrageous that schools are showing this to such young children. I'm appalled and angry. What would you say to that?
Like I said, I really passionately believe that the education system needs an overhaul when it comes to this subject. But I also believe it's imperative that we're teaching it. I think one of the reasons children aren't prepared is because parents don't feel comfortable teaching this and we don't have the knowledge. I'm teaching adults all day about sex. The quality of our relationships determines the quality of our life. And if we can teach all of us in a beautiful and healthy way about sex and it not be an embarrassing topic, we can change society when it comes to this subject, and children don't need to turn to the internet and find far darker materials to teach them an unhealthy
Emiliana, Caroline, we've got to leave it there. We're out of time. Thank you both very much indeed. Thank you. So a raging debate there. We say goodbye to the ladies.
I don't think we're going to agree.
No, of course they're not. Maybe Ian sums it up here. Ian says, I'm a somewhat elderly gentleman, and having been taught in all-boys schools until I was 15, I thought a woman's cycle was one that had a basket on the front.
Very good. Right, do stay with us. We're going to be discussing Jeremy Hunt's emotional revelations about his own cancer diagnosis and how the disease has affected his family.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant, we've agreed my superstar panel that already at it. That fighting is going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So this sex education debate has been continuing over the break with Chris Sakabusi and Dawn Neeson. Chris, what do you think from what you heard before the break?
Yeah, I think it's we've gone too far. It's too much. It's a very, very simple sex education for children at schools needs to be very, very basic. If a boy and a girl lay together, get intimate, babies can happen, venereal diseases can happen, and leave it at that. The idea that you're showing different shapes and sizes, and it's too much for me.
Dawn?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Chris, but obviously my sex education obviously consisted of our mum giving me a book with sort of like cartoons in it, and I looked at it and I said, "Mum, you don't do that with Dad, do you?" And it was like fairly horrifying. So yeah, I think the basics need to be there, but a lot of the other stuff that they're telling them these days.
I remember I was 16 at school, and my mother was pregnant, and I couldn't have the idea that anybody in school would actually think my mother was doing it.
Doing that?
Absolutely. I thought, please don't turn up at school, please don't go. So there'd be the school play and whatever. Mum would say, when is that happening? They don't want parents there, Mum. That's not happening. But she was 48 at the time. And
Go,
maybe she needed one of those videos at that stage. Right, Chris, what have we got to say about Jeremy Hunt? Thankfully, he says, "I'm blessed my cancer was caught quickly." This was skin cancer. Front page of the Mail today.
Yeah, I mean, what I liked about this picture is Jeremy Hunt, for me, and I have not been with, comes across as very stiff and technocratic and sort of asinine. And yet, on this picture, you see the human side of Jeremy Hunt. He's laid back, pair of jeans, open-neck shirt. His wife has got a jeans jacket, and being very, very personal, which is not something that I would actually think Jeremy Hunt would talk about. And he said, look, he's blessed. He's found his cancer early. Both his parents have gone through cancer. His brother has had a bout of cancer, and he recognises how important it is to catch things early. Now, he is also a child of the 60s and 70s, where white guys were encouraged to go out in the sunshine. sunbeds, sunshine,
oil,
really
cooking oil,
yeah, exactly.
any type of oil, and tinfoil. There was also this trick that you would lie on tinfoil.
Yeah, to reflect it up on you.
Reflect it around your body.
Just imagine that sort of stuff we were doing in the 60s and 70s. It was great to be brown and look great, and now we're getting repercussions because it's the 55-year-old pluses who are getting the particular cancer he's got, which is skin cancer. So he's doing a public service, letting everyone know, and he's seeing a gentler, softer side of him. And what I loved also about the article, he said that cancer's a word you hear a lot, and then one day it's actually you. And I've had that experience a couple of times, well over it. But when you're dealing with it yourself, it's never as a joke, but then the reality of your mortality and the reality of the disease hits you.
Yeah, and look, it's really interesting hearing him talking about, I think, a naval admiral, his father, and Lady Hunt, and them having fought it and tragically died from cancer. But here's the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and there have to be questions, don't there, about, well, are you adequately funding the NHS to be able to cope with cancer? We know that we're actually lagging behind Europe on this particular issue. We're pleased to hear that you've done well out of an early diagnosis from the NHS. Lots of people haven't. Is this time to start that
Especially
conversation?
seeing as you shut the NHS down during COVID and it became the National COVID Service. The one thing I would say about this, as a newspaper journalist, is I don't understand why they've done it so big on page one and not mentioned the story of the day, which is the wildfires happening in Greece. It's a strange decision. I'm suspicious. I hate to say it. I think it's great to get the message out there about getting checkups and tackling cancer. But I just think there's something else going on as to why they've done this story today and ignored the main news story of the day.
Well, I guess it's because of that, an exclusive scoop for them. Their reporters got the sit-down interview with him. Yeah, on the front page.
It's a strange decision by the Mail, but it's good to get the message out there, as Chris said.
Dawn, should we talk about Gary Lineker? Des Lynam's got a thing or two to say about him this morning on the front of the Telegraph.
This is on the front of the Telegraph and a huge page inside. Lineker should get on with footy and forget politics, declares Des Lynam. Now, Des Lynam was the Gary Lineker of his day, presented Match of the Day back in 1988 to 99, I think it was. And he's giving an interview saying, Gary Lineker could really just concentrate on the day job and forget all the politics. As we know, Lineker somewhat hypocritically went out to the World Cup in Qatar and said, the human rights issues out here are appalling, but here's me earning loads of money. The BBC paying £1.3 million a year for his job. And he's also very, very vocal on all sorts of politics. He supports Just Stop Oil, which is fine, absolutely his right. And also he has spoken out on politics, and he was the one that accused the Tory party of sounding at one point like the Nazi party, didn't he, with the language that was being used around the immigration situation. So, I mean, to be fair to Des Lynam, he is speaking out, that's his opinion, and Gary Lineker, to be fair to Gary Lineker, has said, look, we're all entitled to our opinions, that's his, I'm entitled to mine. Yeah, but seeing as he works for the BBC, and they are meant to be impartial, I'm not so sure.
Well, if you're a sports presenter, you're allowed to have political views, isn't that the decision?
That's a bit of a weird one.
Yeah, I think we've got to be very careful, though, with this Des Lynam thing, because actually I think Des Lynam's been interviewed about a variety of other things and then got asked about the Gary Lineker and then made an opinion. Well, he's going to say something. So this pits
and he was very complimentary about Gary.
Yeah,
he liked him as a liked him as a broadcaster. Yeah.
Exactly. So we've got to be very careful. We're not pitting these two great broadcasters against each other.
They're not. I mean, Des is the doyen. Des is the pope of broadcasting. He is the one, if you were any good, you wanted to be like, because he was.
Well, it's not. But he was also he knew his subject, but he was also very, very smooth, wasn't he? Very smooth, and very laid back. I mean, I remember Des like you will remember Des doing his thing, and very, very encouraging, very insightful, very warm, humorous.
See, Gary Lineker actually changed the way sports presentation happened after that, because prior to that, they were anchors, they were hosts like David Coleman, Frank Boff, Dickie Davis, Des Lynam. After Des, it was sports hosts that anchored all the programmes. You have to have competed in sport at some level or been involved in sport.
What do you think about that, then?
I don't think it's a good idea, and I just said, particularly on football, I think it's very good to have someone who has an interest, so say someone like myself or yourself, who would be interested in the game and be asked somewhat naive or silly questions at some stage, but have the passion of a fan. You don't always have to be an expert to present certain stuff.
So Stevie Cram, he does athletics.
Yeah.
But Steve Cram went to journalism school.
Yeah.
So after his career, he went and studied 3 years journalism. So I think he's the exception, and I like the idea that you're professional in your job, like you two guys are professional in your job. And maybe there is something about what you're saying. Just because you're a great sportsman, why are you anchoring?
And I think the problem is, as a football fan, it can get too technical. I like being able to ask the fans questions about what the people watching at home are thinking, rather than getting too technical about this particular offside pass and, you know.
I mean, I think Gary Lineker is a very, very good presenter, but the landscape did change when he became... I used to host snooker for the BBC at that stage, and I was being replaced. They wanted to replace me with Gary Lineker.
Snooker?
Yeah, snooker, right, and pot black and things. And I was lucky that the snooker players, like as a union, got together and said, no, we like Eamonn. Actually, this is a tremendous tribute to me that they said, no, we want Eamonn to stay, and they had that power that meant that I stayed on hosting snooker, which was a great compliment. But Gary's top man. But Lynham, see, no one will ever get me to criticise Des. You know, he is... If Des speaks, you obey.
He's entitled to his opinion, absolutely, and he's speaking out.
More solo diners visiting restaurants alone.
Yes, this one really intrigued.
I don't like being in a restaurant alone.
I think you have to be really brave to go to the cinema, go to a restaurant, any of these things.
Oh, OK. Well, so I'm glad that you started that, because I was going to ask you about that. I mean, I do dine alone at lunchtimes. If I'm in London...
In a hotel, I might, you know, I'd have to. My trouble is I would be sitting and having a meal, whatever it is, and then there'd be, sure as heck, there'd be some girl... It's sauce.
Lucky you.
It just comes up. And I'm just thinking, please, just let me eat my meal. You know,
Actually, to be honest, whenever we do go out for breakfast and things, I actually am like your Rottweiler. I do have to bat people away. It does get a bit much sometimes. So it's not even being silly, it's true. Could you dine solo? I don't think I could.
Yeah, I don't mind at all. I'd rather sometimes, I think you get a bit of peace and quiet.
Yes.
But don't you end up just dining with your phone? Just reading, you know, scrolling.
No, but
I like to be present, enjoy my food, have great conversation.
have a Bloody Mary or three.
And also...
Do you know, I was in a hotel at the weekend. Do you know what the first thing on the menu, breakfast menu, was? Bloody Mary.
And did you think of me?
Of course I think about you all the time. No.
Good for you, very nutritionally balanced.
Yeah,
got like tomatoes and stuff in it.
How would you like to spend £350 to be able to dine alone? Because there's one Michelin-style restaurant where if you dine alone, you have to spend a minimum of £350 to cover the table.
Because they're charging for the table, so they're charging for two people.
Yeah.
But even though you're just eating one lot of food.
Yeah. Well, I mean, DP's coming out, the old Dom Perignon's coming out, isn't it? You're going to have to get your money's worth, aren't you? Hey, look at Isabel, she's loving it. Oh, look at Isabel.
If it's Dom Perignon involved, I can slum it on my own. What can I say? Guys, thank you. We'll go through the papers one more time just after 8:30 with Dawn and with Chris. But for now, we say see you later. Thanks very much. And we're going to get your forecast. Here's Marco Botegna.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, I'm Marco Botegna. Here's your latest weather update from the Met Office. We'll see outbreaks of rain clear away to the south-east of the UK through the day today, giving way to a mix of sunshine and showers, coupled with a fairly cool breeze. It's certainly a fairly wet picture across the south and south-east through the morning. We'll see some heavy bursts of rain in places, but as I say, brighter skies tucking in from the north. So as we head into the afternoon, we'll see many places having some sunny spells, coupled, yes, with a few showers, particularly towards the north and northwest, those feeding down in that cooler north to northwesterly airstream. It's certainly feeling fairly chilly out and about towards the north of the UK in that breeze. Temperatures no better than 16 or 17 Celsius. Down towards the south and southeast, we should see a high of 19 or 20. 20 is 68 in Fahrenheit. As we go through the evening, those showers will tend to ease, particularly towards the south and east. Still some feeding in there towards the north and west of Scotland. One or two of those still on the heavy side too. With the clear spells down towards the southeast, turning a little bit chilly in some rural spots. But I think the coldest temperatures will be reserved for the rural spots towards the north. Here dipping down to around about 7 or 8 degrees by Tuesday morning. As for Tuesday itself, another day of sunshine and showers is on the cards. The showers pretty well scattered towards the south and east. Most of those reserved again for the northwest of the UK, and again a few of those will be on the heavy side. Temperatures still disappointing for late July, peaking at around about the high teens towards the north of the UK, possibly a high of 19 or 20 down towards the southeast, and again 20 is 68 in Fahrenheit. That's pretty much it for me. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye for now.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Right, please do stay with us. The latest from Corfu, now under fire threat as well, and Rhodes, as British tourists flee those Greek islands, which are being badly affected by wildfires.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Corfu becomes the latest Greek island to begin evacuations as travel companies scramble to repatriate families fleeing wildfires.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Monday the 24th of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
And leading the news on this Monday morning.
Corfu has issued an evacuation order as wildfires wreak havoc on the Greek islands. The government's putting pressure on airlines to rescue British families as blazes in Rhodes force thousands to flee their accommodation.
Now, this comes as the Prime Minister faces a split within his own party on his commitment to net zero following the Conservative victory in Uxbridge, seen by many as a rejection of green policies.
The Levelling Up Secretary, Michael Gove, will today announce new plans to tackle the housing crisis with proposals to relax rules on extensions and give more flexibility to turn shops into homes.
The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has revealed how his family have been devastated by cancer as he speaks out about his own diagnosis being caught early by the NHS. The Chancellor has called for Britain to become a leader in the global fight against the disease, which took both his parents and has affected his brother.
The Ashes ends in a washout. Rain in Manchester kills England's hopes of a winner-takes-all fifth test, with Australia retaining the urn. Paul Coit will be here with all your sport.
Oh, Isabel, I've got to tell you, it's so tough to take when it's the rain that stops you winning the Ashes. Also, there's a new name on the claret jug because of the Open yesterday, and Harry Kane, I know you're watching. I'll be telling you 4 reasons why you shouldn't use or move to Bayern Munich in the summer.
But I could give you 5 why you should. You know, every time we talk about the little urn, the Australian Ashes,
yes,
I always think of Morecambe and Wise.
Morecambe and Wise, little urn, yes.
I'm laughing even now. Isabel said, what's he talking about?
I know Morecambe and Wise.
Yeah.
Just about know Morecambe and Wise.
Yeah, Eric
I should scale off backwards like that, shouldn't I? Just go like that.
Very good, very good. OK, while Paul is singing and dancing backwards, we'll bring you the latest weather picture.
We've seen a lot of unsettled weather across the UK over the weekend. Will we hold on to that theme during the week ahead? Well, the picture behind me sets the scene quite nicely, but I'll give you more details later.
So the top story is the government's putting pressure on airlines to bring British tourists affected by the wildfires in Rhodes back home.
Ministers held emergency meetings yesterday as EasyJet announced it would run repatriation flights to rescue holidaymakers, with 2 taking place today.
Now, this comes as Corfu becomes the latest Greek island to issue evacuation orders.
Well, let's cross now to our reporter Ray Addison, who joins us from Gatwick this morning. Good morning to you, Ray. Lots of bewildered and weary passengers returning from Rhodes across the UK today, many of whom were only there for 24 hours or less.
Yeah, it's going to be a very anxious wait for many British tourists at Rhodes International Airport this morning. Of course, they're 2 hours ahead of us on the island of Rhodes. The first flight leaves to Gatwick. The first EasyJet flight leaves to Gatwick in around 4 hours' time. The second just under an hour after that, and they're due to come in from around about 2:35 this afternoon here to Gatwick. 2 flights this afternoon, as you were saying. That's expected to be around 420 British tourists on those flights coming back and probably breathing a sigh of relief. A second flight tomorrow, and possibly more. EasyJet says they're going to be basing that upon the need and the demand. Now, in terms of EasyJet holidays, of course, EasyJet holidays departing today and tomorrow, they've all been cancelled, but and they're saying customers will get a full refund. However, the usual EasyJet flights to and from Rhodes will continue. However, you can reschedule or get a travel voucher. TUI doing a bit of a different policy. They've cancelled all outbound flights to Rhodes, but they're saying customers who are on the island need to return on their intended flights, so no rescue mission from TUI at this stage.
OK, Ray, thanks very much indeed. Well, we can speak now to Sarah Shepherd. She's one of the British people who have fled from the island of Rhodes, and I'm pleased to say she's safely home in Southampton and can tell us all about her ordeal. Good morning to you. Just tell us a little bit about your story. What happened?
Yeah, well, it all sort of started. There was ash coming over, and the sky went really black. We knew that fires were burning, but we didn't really realise that they were coming so close. And then the hotel then sent out an alert, and we all had to evacuate from there. And we sort of grabbed what we could and went down to the beach. And then we just followed everybody else. There was just hundreds and hundreds of people just walking, and we were walking away from the fires. And as we looked back, there were just the flames and the smoke, and it was just coming behind us, really. So we were walking away from it. But it was just the most bizarre situation, because there was just people just walking aimlessly with bags, children, old people. We walked for 2.5 hours in the end just to get to a beach, which we were told was a safe area, and then waited for coaches and waited for boats to come and pick us up. And we were on that beach for 12 hours in the end, just waiting for somebody to come and pick us up. And we were just watching the flames and the smoke behind us.
And when you say we, Sarah, who are you talking about, and what were you carrying with you?
So I was with my family, my husband and my 3 teenage children, and we had taken sort of anything we could grab. So we had our suitcases and we had bags and things that we managed to put in there. But walking with them for 2.5 hours in the heat, because it's so incredibly hot out there at the moment. The wheels broke on the suitcases. My husband had the suitcase on his shoulder, trying to carry things. In the end, we ended up, we ditched one of our suitcases on the way, and then we ditched another one. We had to just lose it on the beach, because they said we couldn't take any suitcases on the boats with us.
Goodness me, and I don't suppose...
And everyone was just scrambling for the boats.
Yeah, and I don't suppose... Did you have supplies, food or drink whilst you were on the beach? And what was the atmosphere amongst other holidaymakers? I mean, presumably everyone was really frightened.
Yeah, absolutely. There was nothing. There was no food or anything. There was some really amazing Greek locals that were coming with trucks and with water supplies and things. So we did have water, but everyone was trying to scrabble for shade because it was just so hot, and no one knew what was going on. It was just carnage, and it just chaos down there because nobody knew, and there were just thousands of people just sitting around and sort of just waiting for any sort of information, and
Sarah, just tell me, were you panicked, or how scared were you?
It was funny, we sort of went through stages, because you could see the fire it was there, and we felt like we were far enough away. At one stage, we were really quite scared because we looked behind us, and you could see not just smoke, it was flames right behind us. So, which is why we just kept walking and walking. But went down on the beach, everybody was it sort of went into a little bit of a state of shock and just sat there, really, just waiting for information. But it was hard because there were babies, there were elderly people, all just trying to sort of, just find information, and nobody. It was hard. There were no police down there or anything. I mean, we were lucky that there was somebody from our hotel that was giving us direction, but it was one man, and we felt so sorry for him.
Sarah, a friend of mine was caught up in this at the weekend, and like you, they were also evacuated. And she says that the accommodation that they were due to stay in, because they'd only arrived on the Saturday, was burnt down. Do you know what happened to the hotel, and how does that make you feel?
Yeah, we ended up going to another hotel. They eventually took us, and we then were trying to contact people back at our hotel to sort of find out what the situation was. We hear that it has had damage, but we don't know how severe the damage is. But when we got our transfer company to come and pick us up, so we could get out. And we drove past one of the places. I mean, the devastation was so sad. It really was there was so much damage. And one of the beaches that we'd been to that had beautiful building and all these beautiful sunbeds in it was just burnt. There was nothing. There was nothing left.
Yeah. Was it much of a decision whether to stay on in the new hotel or grab the first flight home?
No, because the hotel that they sent us to, we slept on the lawn. It was like an evacuation centre. They gave us towels, water, and there was no room for us. There was thousands of people sleeping on the tennis courts and everything. So for us, it was we just needed to get out and get home, which was like everybody else. And we actually felt guilty that we managed to get a transfer out because we left thousands of people still there, which we feel guilty about.
Has this put you off the idea of any future holidays? I suppose, you know, this is your first experience. I hope it is your first experience of something as tragic as this. Would it put you off travelling abroad again?
No, I mean, we love to go abroad, and you know, and I just think this is a really isolated situation, and it's devastating for the people of Rhodes. It wouldn't put us off. I just think it was a very scary experience that, you know, and we just felt very out of control. So, but hopefully we would never have to go through anything like that again.
Sarah, what would you say to people who've got trips booked, perhaps to the north of the island, which so far, luckily, haven't been touched by the fires? Would you say go for it? I mean, I know Jet2 and TUI have cancelled all flights to the island, but I think Ryanair and EasyJet are still flying people in, which, you know, a lot of people might be surprised by. What would you say to them?
I know. It's a really difficult one because it's such a volatile situation at the moment, and you just don't know what those fires are going to do because they just kept reigniting when you think it's looking okay. And I mean, Rhodes is beautiful, and it's such a shame that people aren't going to get to go. But I think if it was me and I was at home at the moment, I don't think I would travel, just because you just don't know what that situation is going to then turn into.
Well, thankfully it turned out well for you and your family, Sarah. Welcome home. Thank you for talking to us today. Really appreciate it. That's Sarah Shepherd. She fled from Rhodes, speaking to us live from her home in Southampton.
Yeah, and, you know, a lot of people echoing the concern she had for the people of Rhodes. Tom from Bury St Edmunds, spare a thought for the people of Rhodes and Corfu who are losing their homes and businesses, as well as the brave firefighters who are risking their lives to save others. And I think, you know, it's no small thing that the local people were driving water down to the beach to look after the tourists. I think it should be applauded, and, you know, it's one of the reasons people love to go there. So welcoming. Let's
talk politics now. The Levelling Up Secretary, Michael Gove, will announce new plans to tackle the housing crisis. His proposals are to relax rules on extensions and give more flexibility to turn shops into homes.
Yes, the Prime Minister's also said that Britain's new housing will be focused in cities, as he vows not to concrete over the countryside.
Well, let's speak to our political reporter, Olivia Utley. Olivia, I'm forcing myself not to laugh out loud at what I'm hearing here today. It's just tinkering again. We talk, you know, week in, week out, we talk about the housing crisis in this country, and yet again, fiddling at the edges, no policy towards building private or social, and we'll turn shops into homes. Well, there must be a lot of shops out there that are empty at the moment.
Well, it sounds like you agree with Lisa Nandy, Gove's Labour counterpart, who said that this will just be a drop in the ocean. And you can see where she's coming from. Clearly, there aren't enough barns and agricultural facilities and shops to make the amount of housing that we need. The government is now saying that it will hit its 2019 manifesto pledge to build 1 million homes. But of course, people at home are saying, well, hang on a minute, this has been promised before. And last year, when it was promised that we'd have 300,000 new homes by this year, the government then backtracked on it and said that it was only an aspiration rather than an actual plan. You can see in the Prime Minister's comments today about how he won't concrete over the countryside. The problem that he's got, he does want to build more houses, and he knows that perhaps this is the only way to win him the election. But he has Conservative backbenchers in rural seats whose constituents just don't want new houses on their land. NIMBY's not in my backyard, they're nicknamed. And he just keeps trying to fit that balance get that balance right between building enough new homes and keeping his own backbenchers happy. Keir Starmer has now said that he would be prepared to build on the green belt, that area of countryside that surrounds cities. And Rishi Sunak has responded saying he wouldn't do that, but he would build on brownfield sites, these areas often turn into sort of golf courses that aren't quite protected countryside but aren't quite cities either. That's all very well, but will it make enough housing to anywhere like address the supply problem that we've got?
Can I ask you about net zero policy? We've seen the Labour Party U-turn recently on their big plans and talk of turning their logo green from red, and now it seems as though the Conservatives are having a bit of a sort of, what would you describe it as?
Existential
moment. Existential moment, yeah, about what to do on this, given the sort of referendum that we've just seen in Uxbridge, where people really said, no, we do not like the ultra-low emission zone because it's expensive.
Well, absolutely, and it's a really interesting problem for the government, because if you go to focus groups or polls, then it would suggest that the vast majority of the country is very much behind green policies. For example, ULEZ or any of the net zero specific policies that the government have enacted. But as we saw in Uxbridge, it seems as though, in theory, people are very keen on green policies, but when push comes to shove and the actual money in their wallet is under threat, they would rather go with a less green policy, which keeps them that little bit richer, which is completely understandable in a cost of living crisis. So again, the government is trying to find some sort of balance. And over the weekend, we had Jacob Rees-Mogg actually talking to our Camilla Tominey, former business secretary, saying that the government massively needs to row back on net zero. And Michael Gove, who's actually in the government, the Levelling Up secretary, saying that some of those net zero plans, there's a plan to force landlords can only rent out their houses if they pay for heat pumps for those houses. He's saying that that should be sort of scaled back. So at the moment, the government is sort of, it seems, looking at plans to slightly scale back net zero policies. But then, of course, they've got the environmental Conservatives breathing down their neck on the other side. Chris Skidmore, influential Conservative, chairman of the Net Zero Recovery Force, suggesting that perhaps, no, we've got to go ahead with this. So, again, it's a really, really tricky problem for the Conservatives, and made a lot trickier by that Uxbridge referendum.
Indeed. Can we ask you about Jeremy Hunt, the only paper this morning, the Mail, not to lead with Rhodes, because they've got an exclusive interview with him about cancer.
He says, I'm blessed my cancer was caught quickly.
Yeah, so really interesting interview with Jeremy Hunt. Obviously, diverging out of his brief as Chancellor. He talks about how both of his parents died of cancer. His brother, aged 53, has been diagnosed with a sarcoma, quick-moving cancer. He himself was diagnosed with skin cancer. He had a mole on his head that just kept growing. It was removed quickly, and he says it wasn't life-threatening. But he's essentially saying that the NHS needs to, well, the government and the NHS need to sort of pull their socks up with treating cancer. And you can see where he's coming from. At the moment, Britain is languishing in the league tables for cancer diagnosis times and for recovery rates within 5 years. So his sort of excuse or justification for doing this interview is that actually it does affect the Treasury as well. Yeah. If a cancer is diagnosed at stage 3 or stage 4, then it's twice as expensive for the taxpayer as if it's diagnosed at stage 1 and stage 2. And obviously, with an ever-ageing population, then the problem of cancer is just going to get bigger and bigger and more expensive.
Olivia, thank you very much indeed. We'll take this conversation forward now to Dr. Frankie Jackson. Spence on this one. Frankie, so what we're getting here is early diagnosis is the key.
Absolutely. I can't name a single cancer that, if you don't pick it up early, doesn't improve survival rates. You know, we talk a lot about things like early detection of bowel cancer or breast cancer through the national screening programs. And that's because the early detection means that it's caught at a later stage where you can, an earlier stage, where you can intervene with surgery, which is often curative. In the case of Jeremy Hunt that we've heard about this morning, the mole that he developed on his head was able to be removed surgically and therefore hadn't spread to other parts of the body. And that's when the poorer outcomes come, once it spreads to other parts of the body.
What about the fact that his family seems to have been so badly affected by the C word, by cancer? It so often happens, doesn't it, that you have
running
families...
in the family, yeah.
Yeah, even though it might not be the same cancer. And one always thinks that skin cancer has got sort of environmental factors. It doesn't matter whether you've got a tendency or not. I mean, sort of bust some of the myths and tell us how it works, particularly, you know, for those families where they really worry about cancer.
So unfortunately, actually 1 in 2 of us will develop cancer at some point. So certain cancers do have genetic and familial elements to it, but actually a lot of our lifestyle is responsible for cancer, as well as the fact that we are living longer, we're an aging population, and we're getting better at picking cancers up. In the case of this skin cancer, I believe his parents actually had different types of cancer. So it's unlikely that the skin cancer was genetic and probably was more likely related to UV sun exposure, which is the biggest risk factor for skin cancers. But you're right that cancers can run in the family. We know there are strong genetic links with some certain types of cancer. And if you've had a family member with a type of cancer, particularly at a younger age, then you are at higher risk and should take all suspected cancers seriously, but particularly if you have cancer running in your family.
OK, Dr. Frankie Jackson-Spence, always good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.
Here's what else is happening news-wise. The Metropolitan Police has charged Anjem Choudhury with 3 terror offences. He's due to appear at Westminster Magistrates today, facing charges including directing a terrorist organisation.
Spain is set for political gridlock after its centre-right party failed to clinch a decisive majority in the general election. Both major parties have declared victory, but neither side has a clear path to forming a government. Negotiations by the 2 blocs will start after a new parliament convenes on August 17th.
And one of Wales' most popular spirits is now officially protected after it secured special status. Single malt Welsh whisky joins other famous Welsh products such as beef lamb and leeks in getting protected status, which ensures it's guarded against imitation and misuse.
Talking a lot about the situation in Greece, and I've just had a text actually from Aaron Armstrong, who does our bulletins here very often. He says, I'm supposed to fly to Corfu tomorrow morning. The village was evacuated last night. I spoke to EasyJet this morning asking them to switch the flights maybe to Marseille. They're cheaper flights, but they won't waive the £400 fee, even though they're doing that for Rhodes. Flights are still going. He's actually in a little bit later on. It's a difficult one, isn't it, for the airlines? I mean, can't keep sending people out to a destination that's being evacuated. What to do? Well, we'll catch up with him in a little while.
The airline's attitude, I suppose, is we've scheduled this, we've paid for our slot, we're going, and if you don't go, you're going to owe us money. Let's get the weather update and let's see what way it's looking across the UK.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GBNews.
Hello, I'm Marco Patenia. Here's your latest weather update from the Met Office. We'll see outbreaks of rain clear away to the south-east of the UK through the day today, giving way to a mix of sunshine and showers, coupled with a fairly cool breeze. It's certainly a fairly wet picture across the south and south-east through the morning. We'll see some heavy bursts of rain in places, but to say brighter skies tucking in from the north. So as we head into the afternoon, we'll see many places having some sunny spells, coupled, yes, with a few showers, particularly towards the north and northwest, those feeding down in that cooler north to northwesterly airstream. It's certainly feeling fairly chilly out and about towards the north of the UK in that breeze. Temperatures no better than 16 or 17 Celsius. Down towards the south and southeast, we should see a high of 19 or 20. 20 is 68 in Fahrenheit. As we go through the evening, those showers will tend to ease, particularly towards the south and east. Still some feeding in there towards the north and west of Scotland. 1 or 2 of those still on the heavy side too. With the clear spells down towards the southeast, turning a little bit chilly in some rural spots. But I think the coldest temperatures will be reserved for the rural spots towards the north. Here dipping down to around about 7 or 8 degrees by Tuesday morning. As for Tuesday itself, another day of sunshine and showers is on the cards. The showers pretty well scattered towards the south and east. Most of those reserved again for the northwest of the UK, and again a few of those will be on the heavy side. Temperatures still disappointing for late July, peaking at around about the high teens towards the north of the UK, possibly a high of 19 or 20 down towards the southeast, and again 20 is 68 in Fahrenheit. That's pretty much it for me. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye for now.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GBNews.
The Ashes ends in a washout as Australia retains the urn.
And Paul Coit will be here with all your sport.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
and action.
Sergeant, we've been greeted by superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Time for a look at the back pages of the newspapers. Start, first of all, this is about Harry Kane, saying a lot of papers reporting this. He could be sold if he doesn't commit to a new contract at Spurs. If he doesn't sign, then the owner of Tottenham, Joe Lewis, says sell him. The Express leads with Brian's blessed after the American secured a memorable victory at the Open. He did very well, incredibly consistent in the most awful weather circumstances. And finally, the Mirror focuses on rain washing away England's hopes as Australia retains the Ashes at Old Trafford. And you're a bit
cheesed off.
Cheesed off.
Yeah, that's what I am.
Yeah.
It was just so unfortunate, and across the weekend, and it's as good as England have ever played. Those first couple of days, which were just brilliant. Well, Wednesday, Thursday, then Friday, then we get to Saturday, which I think there was probably 30 overs that were bowled the entire weekend. And it was there for the taking. And all England had to do was just take 5 wickets. Australia were 317.
So you could
England
taste this
590.
victory?
I could taste it. I could feel it. It was going to happen. It was going to level out. You know, I've been saying to you that we were going to come back from 2-0 down and win 3-2. It was there. But now, just because of the rain, Australia have retained the Ashes. The best we can do is draw the series. There can be recriminations looking back and saying, oh, well, maybe, you know, England should have declared at this point in the first test, or they should have batted longer. It's all nonsense. You know, you can always do that in any sport. But unfortunately, what stopped us winning yesterday and in this test was the rain. And it's as simple as that. Very unfortunate.
And yet the Open went ahead in the rain. Terrible situation.
Well, 151st Open, it's a horrible way to... I mean, and also the amount of people thousands of people that go out watching the golf, die hard, and it's usually a lovely day or a lovely 4 days there for the Open, pouring with rain. It's just horrible. But Brian Harman, world number 26, I don't think anybody called that this guy would actually win the Open. It's his first major, came through, and he played
Looks
brilliantly.
like Wayne Rooney, doesn't he?
Yeah, there is a bit of Rooney going on there. He's not very tall, because it's not about the power with him. And with a lot of golf that we've seen recently, the Bryson DeChambeaus of the world, they're building themselves up. It's like a scientific thing. The more power that they have, then they can hit the ball further, etc. You know, this shows that it's actually all about the skills of golf and precision, and that's what he was good at.
Look at all the camera lenses wrapped up there in their Macs.
Absolutely. Everybody was so... And
apart from him, everyone's
Well,
covered
they
up.
have to give the speech at the end, Izzy, so... Always, and it's always tricky for any sportsman. It's like Wimbledon, where they give the interview. You think, I just want to play the sport, but it's expected that they do that. And at the end of the Open, he doesn't get interviewed, but he has to stand up and give a speech, and he's a very quietly spoken fella. And afterwards, people go, oh, well, you know, he doesn't really have a great... But it's like, well, that's not really his thing. He's a golfer, he's a sportsman. He did as well as he could, but... and also, only the third left-hander to win the only the third left.
That was interesting as well.
Yeah,
and the bookies had him at 200 to 1.
Did they really?
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. I don't think even he would have had a few quid on himself. So yeah, very good Open. But I want to tell you about Harry Kane. I'm a little. I know how much you love Harry.
Yeah.
Izzy, and
he's a good role model.
Well, I'm a little bit worried that there's all the talk, and I've been saying, look, there's no way that he's going to leave Spurs. But as you mentioned there, Eamonn, in the headlines, it's 1 year that he's got left on his contract.
Yeah.
So Spurs are at the situation where you either say, no, you've got to stay because they hold the cards. But at the end of the season, he can leave on a free transfer and go wherever he likes. But Spurs could also then think, well, we could cash in on this and get as much money as we possibly can. Now, Bayern Munich seem to be the front runners in this situation. Manchester United have almost dabbled a little bit. There's still talk of whether there's going to be a last-minute bid. But Spurs are going to want around £100 million for Harry Kane. So Bayern Munich are around there. There's talk that his wife, there's also rumours, how true this is, I don't know. I'm going to try and get to the bottom of this. That his wife, Kate, had actually been out to Munich to look at houses. But I do have 4 reasons why, and this is especially for Harry, why he absolutely shouldn't go to Munich. Okay. So can I share you with can I share those with you? Now, the first reason is it's extremely cold, and you don't want to be playing... Look, there it is. It's a beautiful scene. It's a lovely city, but very, very cold to play football in winter. So there's one reason.
I didn't know that. Is it surrounded by the Bavarian Alps or something?
It is, yeah. The Alps are there. I actually saw a game at Bayern Munich's ground, and this is true. They do mulled wine at half-time.
Wonderful.
Which is lovely, you know, lovely warm wine. By the time I sat down to see the second half, the mulled wine was cold.
OK, come on then. What are your other top tips?
OK, the language difficulty. The language difficulty is always going to be tricky. Now, for example, if they wanted to hire a car, the indemnity insurance, the word is actually the longest word in the German dictionary. There it is, and it's Kraftversuchshaft Pflichtversicherung.
Wow,
so there it is, over
accent there,
36 letters long, so that's going to be tricky. The traditional dish, so if he wants to go out, eat out. Yeah. You know, he lives in Hampstead, is Schweinsachse, and that is... now, look at that. That's pork knuckle with potatoes.
Oh, no, thanks.
You know, and I don't think Harry's going to enjoy that,
A litre of beer, by all accounts.
I mean, look at that.
It's like pig's feet.
Well, that's pretty much what... it looks like they come in sets of 4, which is nice. And finally, he will have to dress regularly if he's a Bayern Munich player, in the lederhosen. So there we are, and this is just for Harry and his family. I know you're watching, Harry. I know you enjoy the show. This is how you will have to dress at least 3 times a week if you go to Bayern Munich. And there's the Bayern Munich team. There we are.
Oktoberfest. That's got to be a good reason to go. All his mates will be visiting him all the time.
1 month a year.
Or he could
1 month a year.
He could be lording it in Manchester.
Oh, no, I'm going to do the 4 reasons you shouldn't go to Manchester tomorrow.
Go on.
Is that all right?
Well,
No, I'll save that for tomorrow.
Save that for
because
tomorrow.
I can't find one.
The language thing's not a problem.
You don't think so?
Sprechen die Deutsch des Engländer.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah.
See what that means?
Yeah.
What?
It means I speak German.
Do you speak German? Englishman?
Okay. 9 is the answer to that.
Yeah, I learned that in my comics. I used to get the Victor
Very
in the
good.
Holmes.
That's Kraftversuchschaft fliegt veris herum.
Yes. Okay. We have to go because we need to make time for the papers before the government come on. But still to come, 3 more banks are now being scrutinised amid claims accounts have been closed over customers' political views. We'll get the thoughts of Dawn Neeson and Chris Akabusi after this.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Let's look at the newspapers on this Monday morning. These are the stories that start the week, and with Dawn Neeson and Chris Akabusi. Chris, the bank scandal continues. Front page of the Telegraph. What are they saying?
Yeah, the Telegraph. So, I mean, last week, back in the last week, we had Nigel Farage and his accounts with Coots, etc. But he's not alone. And today in the Telegraph, they revealed that there are 3 more banks up for scrutiny. You've got the Metro, the Yorkshire Building Society and American Express. The same reason, not liking the political views, for example, of Richard Tice and the Reform Party, or in the case of the Reverend Richard Fothergill, they didn't like the idea that he was agitating against their views on the Pride marches. And it's just worrying that banks who I thought are there to either look after your money or lend you money or ensure that the circular economy is going around can take these stands. They take their stands because of their purpose-led organisations. They fall in line with the ESG, equity, social governance frameworks. But it's gone a little bit too far when all of a sudden they are cancelling your bank account. I've had experience with my own bank, know your customer team. And what happens? I mean, I was very fortunate to have a customer relationship manager. Farage fell out with his customer relationship manager, or in fact, his customer relationship manager left, and a new guy came in, and the new guy that interpreted the ESG framework to say, we don't like this guy's food, and there's a potential threat to our purpose-led organisation. For me, it was know your customer team. I've been there for over 30 years, but I lost my customer relationship manager. You go onto these new platforms and they don't know you all of a sudden. And it's just worrying when you think that your bank can cancel you after 30 years of work.
You're a bank. Just look after my money. You're
That's
not meant
what
to
you
be dictating how I think. You're not the thought police.
Correct.
And let's face it, how many bankers cover themselves in glory the whole time in any case?
100% agree. And we just wonder how far this is going. Apparently the government are going to call in all the other banks. You know, I've just named 3 here, just to make sure, look, you know, basically screw the bobbin on.
Ugh, madness.
Meanwhile, can we talk about this weekend in the cinema? Slightly different tack.
Yes, this is obviously
Inside the Mail.
Barbieheimer. I picked this story because it's moving it on. Obviously, yeah, the 2 big film releases. Barbie has grossed £262 million. Oppenheimer 135 million. So that's an awful lot, and it's great for the British cinema. We're all going back to the cinema. I mean, you can't actually get a seat for Barbie, and I've checked. My husband was thrilled. He goes, "I really want to go and see Barbie." No, he didn't. And it's like everyone's going to see it. But this is this chap here. His name's Mitch Corrigan. He's a freelance filmmaker. He's only 22. And he went to see all the big blockbusters in 24 hours, Isabel. He started off at 4:10 a.m. watching Oppenheimer, 8 a.m. watching Barbie, and 11 a.m. watching Mission Impossible. And it's a 300-mile round trip to do it in London as well. 5 out of 5 for Oppenheimer, 1 out of 5 for Barbie.
Well, I put it to you, he might not necessarily be target for Barbie. It's quite niche.
I'm not entirely sure who the target is for Barbie, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But whoever the target is for Barbie, I'm sure they'd give Oppenheimer 1 out of 5 as well.
Our producer, Charlie, what would you give? He's telling me in my ear that Barbie was excellent. He gave both 4 out of 5. Interesting.
Oppenheimer goes on for like 3 hours, doesn't it? It's like, it's a long film.
Well, that's the thing about films now. I mean, the length used to be. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when you used to get 2 films at the cinema. You used to go in, they're both 90 minutes.
Was you an ABC minor?
What?
Was you an ABC minor?
Yeah, you could. And you used to be able to go in at whatever time you wanted. So say you go 20 minutes into the film, well, you would stay until the film repeated itself, and you watched 20 minutes of it, and then you went home after that.
What a weird way to do it.
What a weird way to do it.
But I do think it's nice to see the revival of the cinema, because I do think it's a sad fact that everyone stays at home. It's such a lovely date.
Isabel, I think you're premature there. Saw a report yesterday which said if you have a family of 4 to go to the cinema and get, you know, a couple of soft drinks, a couple of hot dogs, whatever, it's going to be 200 quid.
It's ridiculously expensive, that's the problem.
200 quid.
No,
but it's always been expensive to get food at the cinema. I've never understood why you'd get a hot dog in the cinema.
Ban food at
cinemas. Distracting and smelly.
Yeah, ban food.
So Rishi Sunak took his girls to see Barbie over the weekend.
Yes.
What did he went on a date night with his wife? Was that to see Oppenheimer or was that Mission Impossible? Which is lots of jokes to...
Well, I'd go to Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
well, some of the stunts in there, that bit where he goes over the edge of the cliff on the motorbike.
I'd go to Indiana Jones, maybe. Somebody's talking about that.
I have to go, because of my job, I have to go and see Barbie, and I'm trying to persuade I was telling Chris, I have to try and persuade the husband to come with me to get the man's opinion on it. And every time I suggest it, the second word he says to me is off.
Yes.
So it's...
I'm with Chris. I mean, totally, Isabel's saying that, I think he would enjoy it. Why?
Because Barbie's glamorous and pretty, so there's something there.
Well, why could you could not... Wild horses wouldn't drag me to see that film.
Well, you've got no sense of humour then.
There's lots of... Hold on a minute. There's lots of young ladies going to cinema to watch it. You know, you always get attention from females. Come on, Eamonn. Come on. Come on. I think we've sold it, Isabel.
No, not for that.
You look good in pink.
Right, so what's the situation then about Matt Healy and this group 1975? So they've scrapped more tour dates. They're really falling out with authorities in Indonesia and the Far East about their policy, their equality policies.
Well, this is 1975. They were playing the Good Vibes Festival in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, and obviously Matt Healy, the lead singer, takes a very strong stand against sort of like, you know, discrimination, LGBTQ plus rights, and Malaysia had zero tolerance of that. So he gets on stage, and to move it to prove his point, he actually snogs, and it's a proper snog, the bass player.
It's more than a proper snog.
It was like proper tongues.
So he's not gay, right?
No. He was going out of Taylor Swift 5 minutes ago.
Okay, so he just
possibly
kisses his blood.
So it's full on snog. Now it's like, yeah, okay, you're making the point. I get that. However, when you go to a country like that, you maybe should respect their rules or don't go.
Yeah.
You know, you didn't have to go. You went and you took the money, and then you've made a point, and your front page, you've got lots of publicity for your bands, but you didn't have to.
I just think it's a bit odd for a straight man to be kissing another man.
And it wasn't just a peck on the lips. It was like
old-fashioned.
There were like tongues involved.
They were proper snog.
Let's talk about Twitter, Chris. So the logo, maybe, which is a little blue bird, maybe in danger.
It's instantly recognisable. And so initially, when I opened up this paper, I thought, oh, God, that's strange. Why would you do that? But slowly as I began to read, I began to think, actually, I get it. I mean, when I joined Twitter in 2009, it was a friendly sphere where, you know, it's like being in a pub and having a little chat, tweeting, chatter, friendly, chirpy, friendly place. Fast forward 2023, and it's anything but that sort of place. And now it's angry, vitriolic. Can I say the word bitch in this time?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'll delete that one.
Okay, Doug. Yeah. So. But you know, it's a real horrible place to go. But so he's changing the brand, and maybe the demographic has changed anyway, and I'm thinking it's got the X factor. So it's got some sort of the X factor. Things like, for example, the blue tick, which meant that you were verified. Well, it doesn't mean you're verified anymore. No. It means that you are a committed patron and you're buying into the extra freebies or whatever it is you get by being a blue tick person. So it's changing the demographic, and I think he's probably looking for different type of hardcore sponsors, because he lost a lot of sponsors, didn't he, as well?
Yeah. But is he improving it, or is he making it worse? Well, aren't you regular on Twitter?
No, not anymore. So I used to be quite prolific in the early days. People seem to want to hear my voice then, but now I'm a voyeur.
You know, but the thing is, because he changed the name of it to X or something, isn't he? I mean, I'm still going to say, I tweet it, I'll put it on Twitter.
Did you join that Threads platform?
I tried to, Eamonn, and then I thought, I just can't really
work out what the point of it is, really.
I know. I mean, you know, when you're a freelance journalist, you have to, I know, promote yourself. But I still call opal fruits, even though they've been Starburst for 20 years.
Made to make the mouth water.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it now. Well, joining us now, the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Minister, Andrew Mitchell. Minister, very good to have you this morning, particularly in light of all that is going on in Rhodes and Corfu. What is the latest you can tell us?
Well, good morning. Perhaps you'll allow me to say at the start that our hearts go out to all those who are on holiday in Rhodes, who at this peak period of the year when there are between 7,000 and 10,000 Brits on holiday there, what should be one of the happiest weeks of the year for them, and they're caught up in all this difficulty and turmoil. So our hearts really do go out to them on their holiday. As far as Corfu is concerned, there were some people moved during the night, but they have now gone back to where they were staying. The situation in Corfu is that there are no fires in residential or holiday areas, so there is much better news on that. As far as Rhodes is concerned, we now have a team of 10, that is 6 Foreign Office experts from London and 4 Red Cross support staff at the airport who are giving support to British travellers there. As of last night, they had 20 requests for support, all of which have been dealt with. But the clear advice is to listen carefully to the tour operators and holiday companies. Secondly, of course, to obey the Foreign Office travel advice. And thirdly, to listen carefully to the emergency services if and when they are deployed in the area where you are staying.
What do you say to those criticisms that say that a rapid deployment team should have gone out last week? I mean, the warnings of evacuations began on Tuesday, and it's the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Conservative, who's making those complaints.
Well, Alicia is quite right to hold the government to account. We should always be held to account for what we do on these occasions. My information is that the rapid deployment team was sent very swiftly. It is on the ground, it is dealing with complaints, but there will be a point after this is all over to see whether we could have done anything better. But for now, the Foreign Office is very strongly supporting the deployment team in all the work it's doing on the ground in Rhodes.
Minister, of the people we're talking about there on holiday, whose responsibility is it ultimately to get them back to Britain? The travel operators or the government?
Well, first and foremost, it's the travel operators, and they have been flying out planes which were far from full and in some cases empty in order to bring people back. So I have no information which suggests that they are not doing their stuff, but obviously the government and the Foreign Office keep a very sharp eye on everything that is happening.
I know that you've been describing these wildfires in Rhodes as a bit of a wake-up call when it comes to climate change, and yet there are reports this morning that the splits within the Conservatives on environmental policy is widening, and I wonder whether or not you think that the Conservatives should be rejecting many green policies, and indeed if perhaps there might be any movement on the ban of petrol cars by 2030.
Well, the answer is that we should do both those things. Certainly, we should pursue net zero. Britain actually is the leading G7 country in terms of implementing its promises, and we are ahead of schedule in quite a lot of the net zero measures. But equally, we have to defend households and individuals from rising costs. This government has shown itself very adept at doing that. We did so during the pandemic. We did so when electricity prices went through the roof because of Putin's illegal invasion of Ukraine. The key enemy in all these things is inflation. And the Prime Minister's made it his top determination to reduce inflation. And on that, of course, we had some good news last week. So you can
ban, then,
do
just
both.
specifically on the petrol cars.
Message.
The ban will remain, then?
Well, the government's been very clear that we are phasing them out in 2030, and that, I think, is the right policy to pursue.
Minister, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. That's Andrew Mitchell there, the Minister of State in the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. The time is 6 minutes now before 9.
With all that talk about the situation in Rhodes, let's take a look at what the weather is doing here. Here's your forecast with Marco Patel.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, I'm Marco Petagna. Here's your latest weather update from the Met Office. We'll see outbreaks of rain clear away to the south-east of the UK through the day today, giving way to a mix of sunshine and showers, coupled with a fairly cool breeze. It's certainly a fairly wet picture across the south and south-east through the morning. We'll see some heavy bursts of rain in places, but as I say, brighter skies tucking in from the north. So as we head into the afternoon, we'll see many places having some sunny spells, coupled, yes, with a few showers, particularly towards the north and northwest, those feeding down in that cooler north to northwesterly airstream. It's certainly feeling fairly chilly out and about towards the north of the UK in that breeze. Temperatures no better than 16 or 17 Celsius. Down towards the south and southeast, we should see a high of 19 or 20. 20 is 68 in Fahrenheit. As we go through the evening, those showers will tend to ease, particularly towards the south and east. Still some feeding in there towards the north and west of Scotland. One or two of those still on the heavy side too. With the clear spells down towards the southeast, turning a little bit chilly in some rural spots. But I think the coldest temperatures will be reserved for the rural spots towards the north. Here dipping down to around about 7 or 8 degrees by Tuesday morning. As for Tuesday itself, another day of sunshine and showers is on the cards. The showers pretty well scattered towards the south and east. Most of those reserved again for the northwest of the UK, and again a few of those will be on the heavy side. Temperatures still disappointing for late July, peaking at around about the high teens towards the north of the UK, possibly a high of 19 or 20 down towards the southeast, and again 20 is 68 in Fahrenheit. That's pretty much it for me. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye for now.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, obviously, it's a developing story there in Rhodes and Corfu. A lot of people just in between whether to stay or whether to go. Are the airlines available? Airlines are being urged to rescue British families from what one holidaymaker has described a hell on earth, and it looks just like it.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But yeah.
And action.
Sergeant, we're being greeted by superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political budgets.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you
believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast, whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Corfu becomes the latest Greek island to begin evacuations as travel companies scramble to repatriate families fleeing wildfires.
Hello there, very good morning to you. The time is 9 o'clock on this Monday morning, the 24th of July. This is Breakfast in GB News with Eamonn and Isabel. Good morning to you.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Corfu has issued an evacuation order as wildfires wreak havoc on Greek islands. The government's putting pressure on airlines to rescue British families as blazes in Rhodes force thousands to flee their accommodation.
Now, this comes as the Prime Minister faces a split within his own party on his commitment to net zero following the Conservative victory in Uxbridge last Thursday, seen by many as a rejection of green policies.
The Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove will today announce new plans to tackle the housing crisis with proposals to relax rules on extensions and give more flexibility to turn shops into homes.
The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has revealed how his family has been devastated by cancer as he speaks out about his own diagnosis being caught early by the NHS. He's called for Britain to become a leader in the global fight against the disease, which took both his parents and affected his brother.
And we'll bring you the latest weather picture.
We've seen a lot of unsettled weather across the UK over the weekend. Will we hold on to that theme during the week ahead? Well, the picture behind me sets the scene quite nicely, but I'll give you more details later.
So our top story this morning, Corfu has issued an evacuation order as wildfires wreak havoc on the Greek islands of Rhodes and Corfu. Blazes in Rhodes have forced thousands to flee.
So ministers held emergency meetings yesterday as EasyJet begins repatriation to rescue holidaymakers, with two taking place today, carrying around 400 people.
Greek authorities say the operation is the country's biggest ever evacuation effort, and we spoke to one British person who fled Rhodes and described her ordeal to us.
There was ash coming over and the sky went really black. We knew that fires were burning, but we didn't really realise that they were coming so close. And then the hotel then sent out an alert, and we all had to evacuate from there. And we sort of grabbed what we could and went down to the beach. And then we just followed everybody else. There was just hundreds and hundreds of people just walking, and we were walking away from the fires. And as we looked back, there were just the flames and the smoke, and it was just coming behind us, really. So we were walking away from it. But it was just the most bizarre situation, because there was just people just walking aimlessly with bags, children, old people. And we walked for 2.5 hours in the end just to get to a beach, which we were told was a safe area, and then waited for coaches and waited for boats to come and pick us up. And we were on that beach for 12 hours in the end, just waiting for somebody to come and pick us up. And we were just watching the flames and the smoke behind us.
Well, Sarah was a holidaymaker. Meanwhile, the Foreign Office Minister Andrew Mitchell told us what the government's doing to help other British holidaymakers still there on the island.
We now have a team of 10, that is 6 Foreign Office experts from London and 4 Red Cross support staff at the airport who are giving support to British travellers there. As of last night, they had 20 requests for support, all of which have been dealt with. But the clear advice is to listen carefully to the tour operators and holiday companies. Secondly, of course, to obey the Foreign Office travel advice. And thirdly, to listen carefully to the emergency services.
Well, let's go to our reporter, Ray Addison, who joins us from Gatwick this morning. Good morning to you, Ray. Look, obviously this will result in lots of confusion, some people coming back prematurely, other people not really sure what they should be doing.
Yeah, well, the Foreign Office is saying there's between 7,000 and 10,000 British tourists currently on the island of Rhodes. Many will have spent the night on the floor of Rhodes International Airport, waiting anxiously for those repatriation flights to come about. Many were evacuated from their hotels in the middle of the night, starting Saturday, as those fires swept from the mountains and towards the more tourist areas along the coast. Some lost their luggage. Some got separated from their families. Well, around 420 will be arriving here at Gatwick Airport at about 2:35 this afternoon, from 2:35 this afternoon, on 2 flights being put on by EasyJet. They leave at about 10:30 a.m. UK time from Rhodes, and another rescue flight will be taking place tomorrow. EasyJet says they could increase that if there is demand. TUI is another operator that flies in here to Gatwick. They're taking a different stance. They've cancelled all of their outbound flights to Rhodes, but they're saying that tourists need to come back in on their regular scheduled flights, so no emergency repatriation flights from TUI. Now, we were hearing earlier on GB News Foreign Office Minister Andrew Mitchell confirming that a rapid deployment team has now arrived at Rhodes International Airport. 6 members of Foreign Office staff and 4 members of the British Red Cross as well. They've dealt with 20 requests for assistance so far from tourists, and they're there if tourists need any additional help. They're also urging people to make up your own minds about travelling to Rhodes, because it's up to the tour operators to bring you back. The government will not be able to fly you back here to the UK.
OK, Ray.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madeline Grant is with us now. Madeline, if it was you and you had to make up your own mind whether to travel to Rhodes or not, what would you do?
Well, I think I would be a big coward and stay put and see if I could. I think it's probably wise to book with British Airways if possible this summer, because obviously they have a very flexible policy on changing your flights and cancelling them for free. So I think I would sit tight here and be a big baby.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because in many ways, if you're going to the north of the island, we're told that's not been affected. And, you know, if there are huge parts of the island that have been devastated, this is a lifeline. They need the business. They need tourists coming out. But again, you know, a friend of mine flew out on Saturday. They were advised that it was all fine when they set off at 2 o'clock. The wind direction changed. And come evening, they had to be moved to another resort, and theirs is subsequently burnt down. Terrible situation.
Absolutely
with small children. I can see why you would take that position. What do you make of the government's response to all of this? Because I was asking Andrew Mitchell whether or not they should have sent a rapid response team sooner, given as the chair of the Conservative Foreign Affairs Select Committee said, actually, this should have been Wednesday, not Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to predict what's happening because, as you say, it's kind of based on the vicissitudes of the weather. But, yes, there is serious criticism in the Conservative Party from Alicia Kearns over the government's lack of response. Of course, hindsight is always 20/20, but this is a problem, I think, that we're going to see more and more of as we get more and more extreme weather on the continent. And, obviously, British holiday makers, they are, you know, sun seekers in general, and there are many resorts in Europe that are, you know, almost entirely dependent on British tourists who love to get away from rainy old Blighty.
Well, if you're not getting away, you're going to have to deal with stuff in the papers and in the news from the Levelling Up Secretary, Michael Gove, who's going to launch new plans to tackle the housing situations. So the big idea here, Madeline, is to relax rules on extensions and give more flexibility to turn shops into homes. I can see there's like 7 million shops waiting to close down and become homes. I mean, catch yourself on,
well, it's
really.
this email from Stephen in Nottingham that came in earlier. So after 13 years, suddenly there's an announcement coming about relaxing planning laws so as to increase housing stock. Blah, blah, blah. Same old smoke and mirrors. I mean, He does have a point?
He's got a point, absolutely. I mean, I think that actually this is a good idea because there are lots of shops that, sadly, I mean, because of the rise of Amazon and online shopping, it's never going to be the same again. And it seems a no-brainer that you would convert disused or less used properties into homes. And that might actually help to reinvigorate the high street because there would be more footfall going into cities.
No, there won't. It kills the high street. I've seen it so many times. They turn what was a bakery or what was a butcher's into apartments. Whatever, it just goes dead. Petrol stations, another thing. They build apartments where petrol stations are. It doesn't invigorate anything. It just gives you more houses with nothing around them.
Well, I disagree because I think that you're not going after businesses that are doing particularly well already. Otherwise, they wouldn't be vacated.
But you not think it's government's responsibility to enhance the community and to feed that community and local authorities' position? I think they should be making shops available for florists and fruit and veg and goodness knows what, and making it an attractive situation. But I'll tell you, you'll get nothing. All you get when you convert a shop into a flat is a flat. You'll get no more footfall or anything else.
Well, I just think that the fact is that people shopping habits have changed. It's not really in the government's gift to force everyone to shop in physical bricks and mortar shops when they have embraced online shopping in the way that they have. And to me, using those properties for housing when we have a massive housing crisis is a good idea, especially because...
Many of them are. There are 200, 300 around the country.
Yeah,
I mean, to try and pretend this is going to solve the problem.
No, it's not going to solve it. It's a small step. It will have some, I think, some small beneficial impact, but it's definitely not a kind of silver bullet. And the fact is that it's coming so late after years and years of government inaction, as your correspondent pointed out in that email.
It was just it was one of our viewers or listeners emailing in. Oh, sorry, I see what you mean by correspondent.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
An emailer rather than one of our reporters.
Exactly.
I just want to ask you, because we know that all the MPs have, summer recess now, they're off away in their constituencies having a nice summer, and the Prime Minister, before they all went off, said to his MPs, have a great holiday, try and get a break in, and when you come back, we've got to be united because it's the only way we're going to win the general election next year. And yet here we are in the papers this morning reading the likes of Michael Gove talking about the net zero crusade. There's a huge civil war within the party, isn't there, about what to do about green policy. So,
question is are there votes in ditching green?
I actually don't think there's as much disagreement as you think. There are a handful of MPs who are really committed to the green agenda, but I think there are far more who actually are worried about the electoral consequences of imposing green policies on individuals. Like, when the pledge came in, it came through in the most kind of opaque way. It was sort of waved through in the dying days of Theresa May's premiership, and there wasn't any proper parliamentary debate or scrutiny of the net zero pledge. And I think that what's happened since then is there's been quite a lot of pie in the sky talk about how we get there, and now it's actually getting to the point where taxpayers have to consider how they might fund net zero, and at a cost of living crisis. I think that the priorities have shifted, and there's always been quite a lot of opposition to net zero within the Tory party. There's been a net zero kind of scrutiny group, a caucus of MPs who often critique the government's plans, and especially after what happened in Uxbridge, I'm not sure there's that much division anymore. I mean, of course, even Labour are rowing back on their green plans. I think there's a widespread consensus that this has gone too far, and that, the finances of ordinary voters needs to take top priority.
Except, totally take what you're saying, but then people, however much they disagree with Just Stop Oil or whatever, they may look at what's going on around the world at the moment and they think maybe they've got a point.
Well, the thing is that a lot of what we're doing, it's not clear how this is going to solve the global problem. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, Britain is a very low emitter in the global population. When you have China opening a new power station every week and with no plans to ditch their fossil fuels as other countries are doing, I think that you need to take a more global and pragmatic approach.
Can you extrapolate that net zero and ULEZ are the same things, and rejecting all green policies on the basis that people didn't want to try and lower emissions in London is different, because that's more about breathing clean air and reducing the number of deaths and things, not necessarily about, stopping oil dependency and things. It's easy, isn't it, just to kind of blanket change policy off the back of...
No, I agree. I think there are a lot of people who are reading too much into ULEZ and Uxbridge, but I think that the general point that voters are worried about the hit to their personal finances of what these grand aims, these grand pledges made by politicians will mean for them in practice.
I think, Madeleine, I think your point of actually standing apart and saying, fine, we may be sympathetic to these policies and whatever, but we're so far down the list. Sort out India, sort out Brazil, sort out, you know, Russia, whatever it happens to be. And when they do what they're supposed to do, then we'll happily tag along.
Or at the very least, that if we could spend, I reckon, you know, £1 spent trying to make a poorer country that is heavily reliant on fossil fuels, if we were to subsidise their shift rather than hampering families with, you know, forcing them to have a heat pump, I actually think that a better use of money would be taking a global look at things.
All to be debated, and I'm sure our viewers will have lots of strong thoughts on all of that. For now, Madeleine, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Madeleine.
Right, with the time at 14 minutes past 9, let's take a look at today's top headlines.
Well, the Metropolitan Police have charged Anjem Chaudhry with 3 terror offences. He's due to appear at Westminster Magistrates today, facing charges including directing a terrorist organisation.
Spain is set for political gridlock after its centre-right party failed to clinch a decisive majority in the general election. Both major parties have declared victory, but neither side has a clear path to forming a government. Negotiations by the two blocs will start after a new parliament convenes on the 17th of August.
And one of Wales' most popular spirits is now officially protected after it secured special status. Single malt Welsh whisky joins other famous Welsh products such as beef, lamb and leeks in getting that protected status, which ensures it's guarded against imitation and misuse. Britain's Newsroom coming up at 9:30 with Andrew and new face on the programme, Carol Malone.
Look who's here, my old mucker, Carol Malone. I was going to talk about misuse of whiskey, actually, because I did very famously misuse whiskey once when I was 19. Never again.
I want to hear
never again. No, not whiskey. Malone, you'll never see me with a glass of whiskey.
You've misused lots of other types of alcohol
I have.
since. This is interesting for us because, you know, we presented a show together 2 decades ago, and we both got fired.
Yeah, after one show.
Giggling so much.
So we're hoping not to set a precedent, but I do think she caused more of the trouble.
No, I think it was your fault.
Probably.
Anyway.
I'm a long-term believer in giggling on air.
I think so.
I think it's infectious and people like to laugh.
Well, there's going to be a lot.
We're going to get a lot of that today.
But we're going to be very serious, of course, because we've got Nigel Farage coming on with the latest. We've got the Treasury Minister, Andrew Griffiths, writing to that wretched bank, Coots, and well, all the banks, actually.
And we're going to do the Labour ULEZ backlash. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about the vicar. Do you remember Wendy Dalrymple, the story last week? She was attacked online because she has lots of tattoos. Lots of the traditionalists have attacked her. So we're going to talk about her today.
Yeah, we are. And, of course, the barge down in Portland.
Stockholm,
50 migrants only are moving on. What about the other 100,000? I thought this was going to be the solution
This is going to be for 500, and I think they're going to come over the next 18 months or so. But it's not a bad place, actually. I know that lots of the charities are saying it's inhumane and cruel, but it doesn't look that cruel to me.
Yeah, swimming pool?
OK, too many smiles from you two already.
Yeah, already. Careful.
Too much tittering.
Too much fun being had.
Titter ye not. Who said that?
I don't know.
Kenneth Williams.
There you go.
He did.
Was it not Frankie Howard?
Maybe it was.
Oh, you're right, it was. You're right.
Love Frankie.
Anyway, 17 minutes past 9. These two will be tittering and disagreeing and arguing and whatever from 9:30.
In the meantime, we're going to be talking about the King visiting Lincolnshire later today to commemorate the service of those brave men who undertook the Dam Busters raid. All the details after this.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Now, to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the Dam Buster raids, King Charles will visit the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight in Lincolnshire late this afternoon and meet with World War II veterans.
Well, our royal correspondent Cameron Walker is with us this morning for more details. It's another busy day for the King and Queen.
It certainly is. I mean, it was May 1943 where British squadrons, the 617 Squadron, flew over Germany, destroyed 2 dams and really put a hammer blow in the Nazi war effort. And the King is visiting the RAF Battle of Britain Memorial Flight today in Lincolnshire. It's the RAF aircrafts in World War II which we see fly over Buckingham Palace during Trooping the Colour, the coronation, of course, as well. But what's really interesting is he's meeting RAF veterans who actually were helping out in that war effort. These guys are over 100 years old. So we have Flight Sergeant Henry Townsley, who turns 103 on Thursday, the 27th of July. He was part of a Lancaster bomber. He was a Lancaster bomber flight engineer during World War II. There's also Frank Tolley, who is 102. He volunteered to join Bomber Command after seeing the devastation in Coventry during 1940. Of course, the city pretty much destroyed by the Luftwaffe during World War II. So it's going to be a pretty interesting afternoon for the King in Lincolnshire.
And the Queen also busy. She's carrying out engagements in Norfolk today.
Yeah, she certainly is. Now, Black Beauty, we're told, is one of the Queen's favourite childhood novels. She loves horses, and the Anna Selwell and Red Wings Horse Sanctuary is the house, essentially, where she grew up in, Anna Selwell, who is the author of the Black Beauty books. So the Queen is highlighting the books, but it's also a horse sanctuary. It helps around 100 horses a year find a new home as well. But it's all about, perhaps, literature and creating a legacy for this author, because the Queen has launched launched her reading room, trying to encourage adults and children alike to read and get into literature. So it's all about that. They're still very much carrying on despite it being the summer holidays.
And talking about them being busy, interesting reports over the weekend about the Princess and Princess of Wales still doing the same number of engagements as they did before they got this promotion. But I feel like we see them constantly, almost every day. Can't imagine them doing more.
Maybe Wimbledon, for instance, isn't regarded as a charitable day out.
Well, according to Gert's Royals, which is this quite reputable royal blog, Charles has done 205 engagements so far this year, compared to William's solo engagements, only 54. But I don't think you need to read too much into this. The reason being is that William and Catherine both do quite a lot of work behind the scenes, working on long-term projects such as the Earthshot Prize with Prince William, the Princess of Wales's early childhood project called Shaping Us. So there's a lot behind the scenes as well.
And William has to run the Duchy of Cornwall as well.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a business. Thanks very much indeed. Thanks for keeping us up to date, Cameron. Appreciate that.
We'll be back bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. Up next.
It is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Carol.
Cara Malone, Andrew Pearce. Lots to talk about in this programme. Talking to Nigel Farage again about Coots. What else are we talking about?
Talking about the Vivi Stockholm, the barge in Dorset.
Yeah, also the row in the Labour Party over the ultra-low emission zone. Michael Gove, housing.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about a vicar called Wendy Dalrymple. You might have seen a story about her last week, attacked on Twitter for having tattoos on her arms.
Got to get him in the church.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, I'm Marco Patenia. Here's your latest weather update from the Met Office. We'll see outbreaks of rain clear away to the south-east of the UK through the day today, giving way to a mix of sunshine and showers, coupled with a fairly cool breeze. It's certainly a fairly wet picture across the south and south-east through the morning. We'll see some heavy bursts of rain in places, but as I say, brighter skies tucking in from the north. So as we head into the afternoon, we'll see many places having some sunny spells, coupled, yes, with a few showers, particularly towards the north and northwest, those feeding down in that cooler north to northwesterly airstream. It's certainly feeling fairly chilly out and about towards the north of the UK in that breeze. Temperatures no better than 16 or 17 Celsius. Down towards the south and southeast, we should see a high of 19 or 20. 20 is 68 in Fahrenheit. As we go through the evening, those showers will tend to ease, particularly towards the south and east. Still some feeding in there towards the north and west of Scotland. One or two of those still on the heavy side too. With the clear spells down towards the southeast, turning a little bit chilly in some rural spots. But I think the coldest temperatures will be reserved for the rural spots towards the north. Here dipping down to around about 7 or 8 degrees by Tuesday morning. As for Tuesday itself, another day of sunshine and showers is on the cards. The showers pretty well scattered towards the south and east. Most of those reserved again for the northwest of the UK, and again a few of those will be on the heavy side. Temperatures still disappointing for late July, peaking at around about the high teens towards the north of the UK, possibly a high of 19 or 20 down towards the southeast, and again 20 is 68 in Fahrenheit. That's pretty much it for me. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye for now.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
Please
stop. Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant, the big read by superstar panel. They're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.